Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Market, advertise, and sponsor your business with Vietnam veteran Cliff Kelly and America's Heroes Group, where information and resources are intentionally disseminated via radio, print, and social media. Call our office for more details at 312-803-2618. Market, advertise, and sponsor your business with Vietnam veteran Cliff Kelly and America's Heroes Group, where information and resources are intentionally disseminated via radio, print, and social media. Call our office for more details at 312-803-2618. Market, advertise, and sponsor your business with Vietnam veteran Cliff Kelly and America's Heroes Group, where information and resources are intentionally disseminated via radio, print, and social media. Call our office for more details at 312-803-2618. Market, advertise, and sponsor your business with Vietnam veteran Cliff Kelly and America's Heroes Group, where information and resources are intentionally disseminated via radio, print, and social media. Call our office for more details at 312-803-2618. Market, advertise, and sponsor your business with Vietnam veteran Cliff Kelly and America's Heroes Group, where information and resources are intentionally disseminated.
Homeless housing advocate and consultant and contractor. I'm just going to talk to you guys a bit before we get started to let you know where we are from last month to this month. We're working with Jesse Brown every single month, bringing a housing and workshop for not just veterans who are looking to buy, but veterans who are looking to rent because they're without housing, unhoused. I want to thank Cliff Kelly, America's Heroes Group, co founder, U.S. Army Vietnam veteran and host emeritus, for having a spot for me here on the show. Because what we have to talk about every month has been happening for the past 21 years that I've been serving homeless veterans. Homeless veterans from homeless and all types of homelessness. Some people think, and I had a real good conversation this week, and I'm like, I never thought about homelessness as everybody being literally on the street. But that's a lot of people's perception. And I'm here to break that glass, shatter that glass to let people know every veteran who is classified as homeless, they don't live on the streets like we see the tents and begging for money and things of that nature. So we have a very special guest here today. And I call this show A Journey of Resilience. And I am going to talk about this for just one moment before we jump right into it. Again, my name is Yvette Jones Swanson. I am a national veterans housing homeless advocate consultant and contractor nationwide. So, in this right here, I want you guys to buckle your seats because it's going to be a good one. Imagine this. After 37 honorable years of service in the military, my special guest, Mr. Swanson, found himself facing an unexpected challenge that he's going to talk about. And that challenge was being unhoused or having permanent housing. After serving 37 years and retiring, did I not mention that? 37 years and coming home unhoused. But every journey has a silver lining, and I'm proud to have been by his side as his realtor, guiding him through this transition. Together, we navigated the complexities of the housing market and turned dreams into reality. Because I am a realtor, I'm a realtor with Real People Realty, and has been. Yeah. Have.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you. Have been for the past since 2011. 11. That's how long I've been with Real People Realty. I've been a realtor for 26 years. 21 of those years I've been housing homeless, unhoused, not having permanent housing veterans. I just say homeless veterans. I was once a homeless veteran 7 or more times. I just stopped counting. So listen to this. Mr. Swanson's story is a testament to resilience, hope, and the importance of community support. Let's continue to uplift and empower those who have served our country. Here's to new beginnings. I'd like to introduce you all to Mr. Stephen Swanson, my special guest, and my husband.
Mhm.
Hey, honey.
All right.
So today is October 16, 2024. My husband is Army retired Stephen Swanson, Master Sergeant. So you and I, it's just you and I and the millions of people who are watching. We want to know what happened. You retired from the Army unhoused. We want to know what happened, and then we want to know what happened next. So let me ask you this first question. Reflecting on your transition from military life, what were some of the biggest challenges you faced becoming unhoused? And how did you navigate those challenges during your initial adjustment period?
Okay. The biggest challenges was, in the military, of course, as you become more senior, uh, as far as being there so long, getting higher in rank,
Mhm.
you got a lot of duties to do, a lot of hats to wear,
Okay.
and trying to do those duties at the same time that I was becoming, trying to out process
Mhm.
was a challenge because you got to go through a lot of different places, sign off on everything.
Yeah.
At the same time, you got to do your work because the military don't care about your personal stuff.
Right.
They want you to do the job. So that's why I found myself kind of stuck in the middle of that, trying to make sure I get all my paperwork together. So I had to, make a decision which one was more important. If I didn't do my job, of course, I would have got a bad evaluation,
Mhm.
could have got bad other than honorable discharge,
Yeah,
and
we didn't want
things like
that.
that. Right.
Mhm.
So I had to sacrifice which one was more important, making sure all my paperwork together so I get all my benefits when I got out
Mhm.
and just deal with what I had to deal with once I got out.
Mm.
I didn't feel like the challenge was going to be that difficult
Mm.
for me to get a place to stay after I got out of the military.
Well, I asked you a question last night. I asked you, when did you retire?
That was almost 7 years ago. It will be exactly 7 years,
What's
October the 31st of 2017.
And then when were you permanently housed?
I was permanently housed on September of 2018.
Where was that permanent housing?
That permanent housing was in Park Forest, Illinois.
Okay, so from 2017 to 2018, that was a total of 11 months that you were without permanent housing.
Searching for housing, yeah.
So after you retired, 37 years, and he retired unhoused, which is not uncommon because a lot of veterans don't have time to do, like I used to call him Mr. But to do like Stephen said, they don't have enough time to do their actual job duties and come back to where they're going to retire to live.
Mm. So but let's make sure everybody understand those 37 years was a combination of active duty and reserve. 15 years on the active duty side and 22 years on the reserve side.
So when you retired, where were you stationed?
I was stationed in Newark, Delaware.
And how long were you there?
I was there almost 4.5 years.
Okay. So 4.5 years, and then you come back to Chicago because that's where you're going to retire.
Yeah. Well, yeah, pretty much.
So that's what you did?
That's what I did. Well, initially I thought I was going to stay there. That's why I wasn't so much looking for a place because I knew I could get something in, I already had a place there.
Yeah.
I could have continued the apartment that I stayed in, but, I decided to come back home, try to help with my kids, of course.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that worked out. So we do have some more interesting questions to ask and maybe fill in the blank with some people. Let me tell y'all, this show is it just plays over and over and over again with veterans who are out processing. How long did you tell me that it should take a veteran to outprocess, to get the necessary tools that they need to come back to where they're retiring to live?
Yeah, I would say nothing less than 6 months. But what the military do, they put you in a TAP program, which is 40 hours, right? And so those 40 hours, the main thing that I learned from the TAP program was basically just how to do a resume, how to get a job. Not too much about housing was never mentioned, not that I remember. And I'm still available to go to those TAP programs. But most of it is about, getting a good job, getting your resume built up, getting connections for jobs or whatever.
Yes.
But nothing about housing. Yeah.
So that's where the disconnect is.
Yeah. It's a big disconnect. And I would like to see more of that included in some of that process. And it need to be extended because, if you want to buy a house or get a place to stay, you need time. You want to review the area, neighborhoods, whatever you want to do. So
right, because you may not come back to the same community that you left from.
You want to pick different areas that you want to be a safe environment for you to live. So, yeah.
So just in case you all are wondering, Mr. Swanson was my client as a realtor. Our lender from Loan Depot, Timothy Lee, called me on the day Mr. Swanson was at a Veterans Resource Fair.
Yes.
Look, doing what? Where were you doing there?
I think I was just job hunting or something like that and ran into Timothy. Yeah.
So you did what the TAP program said and go look for a job.
Go looking for a job.
But you had already retired and there's so many things needed to happen in order to bring your life together.
Right. yeah, so many things to pull it together. I mean, I was staying traditionally, transitionally, rather, different hotels,
Mhm.
months at a time until I finally, found a place to stay. But, I had an apartment I thought I was going to move into, but it didn't work out. The landlord, the lease, I just didn't agree with.
Mhm.
Uh, and shortly after that, I think I ran into Timothy at the job fair,
Mhm.
and he introduced me to
And
you,
that's the day he called me and you were standing right there and he put you on
standing
the
right there.
phone.
Yeah.
And I said, "No veteran under my watch is
Mhm.
going to be homeless." I was furious when I heard his story.
Yeah.
37 years and you retire unhoused. It's like the military just said, "Get out."
Well, yeah,
Really?
yeah. It
Really?
it, it was a lot, and I don't want to really go into that,
I
but yeah,
know.
well, a lot involved in into that, and they had to know I hadn't, had a place to stay, but
I know.
it is what it is, right?
They know a lot of things that
That's one thing they teach you is to hey, adapt and overcome,
Mhm.
right? Yeah.
So again, my name is Yvette Jones Swanson, and I am sitting here with my husband, Stephen Swanson, who is a retired Army Master Sergeant serving 37 years in our armed forces, who retired unhoused until he met me.
Mm.
Now let me set the record straight because it has always been a pet peeve of mine never to what's when you date somebody you work with. I would never do that. So I don't mess with the hand that feeds me, and real estate fed me and still is. So he was never looked at as a man of mine until he called me and said, "Happy birthday to me." I'm like, "It's not my birthday." It was his birthday.
That's right. Yeah.
And I still felt so bad because we looked at several houses
Hmm.
and it was always something. And I understood what you meant when we finally found that first house, that it was a really, really nice and big townhome. And all of your stuff after all those years
Right.
could fit.
In storage, yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that was very insightful that happened.
Mhm.
So let's carry on. How did your military experience shape your resilience and determination in overcoming the hardships of being unhoused? And the second part is, can you share any specific lessons that helped you in this journey?
Um, just like I said, my career in the military over the several years, right? Traveling, being in different countries, different conditions, um, just give you a little more ability to withstand a lot of stuff.
Mhm.
You know, if I was on the street, I probably would be able to survive. Everybody can't do that depending on what area you are. But just, all of the military training I had, I know how to survive,
Yeah.
in pretty much in any environment. But
Yeah.
um yeah, you just want to look um and yeah, so that was mostly how I was able to overcome, just being out there unhoused.
With the training over the
But at
37.
the same time, like
Mhm.
I said, I saved my money while I was in. I had money enough to stay in the military. I mean,
Right. In the
in those
motels.
hotels
Mhm.
until I found something.
Yeah.
Fortunately for me, and I wasn't really out on the street like that. But and then I was still putting in for my disability rating, so that was extra money that I would need that I could use to buy a house
Yeah.
or an apartment, get an apartment or whatever. But my main thing was getting apartments. But of course, as we know, apartment housing ain't what you really want to do,
Right.
right? And that's only a temporary fix,
Yeah.
So yeah.
All right.
Hmm.
So I had a conversation
Hmm.
with we're going to take a break and come back. Oh, okay, no we're not. So
Okay.
so I had a conversation with my therapist this morning. I didn't tell you about this because you weren't home. But my conversation, and as a veteran, we have that as a healthcare benefit. So if you need someone to talk to, contact your primary care provider and talk to somebody. This really helps, with our PTSD and other conditions that we have. But this morning I talked to my I don't know, psychologist about the term homeless, because my husband, he said, don't say that about me. And I respect that. So we had to come up with a term, because when you think of the word homeless, people think that it's dirty, it's shameful, it's just maybe on drugs, alcohol, and you're living on the street, and you really have no resources. So he wasn't what the notion is that some people have. He was transitioning, not in, how do we put it, without permanent housing.
Mm-hmm.
Because I had a conversation with her this morning.
Yeah.
And I also had a conversation with Gabrielle, because she thought all homeless people were that way. And that's where I'm like, oh no, people think like that.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you and I had that conversation. I'm glad Gabrielle and I had that conversation, because for 21 years, I just say homeless, because that's how the government categorizes people, veterans who are unhoused. So now we can shape those conversations around. This is how it went this morning. Without permanent housing, but you're homeless. But how does that look to you? What's happening while you're in this state with being without housing?
Transition.
Right. Are you couch surfing? Are you on the bus? This happens to some people. On the train, in the park, in a shelter, in a motel. Yeah, that came real common to me, because I wasn't in the position of receiving service connection disability pay. I barely had a job, and the job that I had when I was homeless, because sometimes I was in my car. A lot of times I was in my car, on the bus, on the train, in the hallway of an apartment building, sleeping between the door frame. So the luxury of having money to stay in a motel, that would have been ideal. But some people are categorized that way. And then from being unhoused, we seek shelter in places which had heat or air conditioning to be out of the weather. Okay. And want what led to being homeless. I don't know what that said. But anyway, we've got 1 minute left, and I want to tell you guys that we have a YouTube channel. We're going to continue this conversation. Just look up my name, Yvette Jones Swanson, or Vet Mentors LLC. And I want to thank my husband for being here. Thank you, honey, for explaining how, all that he talked about. Thank you guys for watching.
Disseminated via radio, print, and social media. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Market, advertise, and sponsor your business with Vietnam veteran Cliff Kelly and America's Heroes Group, where information and resources are intentionally disseminated via radio, print, and social media. Call our office for more details at 312-803-2618. Market,
Ken Jennings. All of us here at Jeopardy want to thank you for your service to our nation. We truly honor and appreciate you, and what's more, we're looking for contestants like you to play on our show. So head to Jeopardy.com now and take the Anytime test, and we're looking forward to seeing you soon right here on the Alex Trebek stage.
Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally.
So welcome to America's Heroes Group. I'm Sean Claiborne, your host. Today we have one of the great shows we're going to put together, what you're going to see this week. It's going to be one of the greatest shows you've ever seen in your life, in the words of Donald Trump. America's Heroes Group, our digital roundtable media show. Today is Wednesday, October 16, 2024. Now we're going to talk about something that's very, very important, and that is what type of book could be written that might make Donald Trump look a little bit worse than sometimes he does to himself. And that's why we have a certain person here that's really, really good at this type of stuff. Her name is Stephanie Kalota. She's a U.S. Army veteran, and she's also was a sergeant first class, and she served in the Army and the Reserves. And she's the founder and creator of the Veterans Legislative Voice. Now, tell us a little bit about a book written by a certain journalist that has been around for a very long time. And also, what was your reaction to some of the things that he put in this book?
Okay, well, first, there is a book that published on October 15th. It is written by Bob Woodard. It's called War. And Bob Woodard, if you're not familiar with that name, he has been a longtime writer and editor with the Washington Post. He's most known for his work with the Watergate coverage back during Nixon. And of course, he's covered many times movies, TVs, documentary, different things like that. He's also a winner of 2 Pulitzer Prizes. He has authored 22 best-selling books. So we're waiting for War to make that list as well, which would be really interesting. And this is a book that is an intimate, sweeping account of one of the most tumultuous and dangerous periods in presidential politics and American history, with Trump, Biden, and Harris at its center. And that's directly from Simon & Schuster's webpage. So it's given us a behind-the-scenes story of 3 wars, Ukraine, Middle East, and the struggle for American presidency. The biggest thing that's been making the news lately is about Trump sending Putin, particularly to Putin, that we assume for his personal use, COVID tests when these tests were very scarce during the COVID pandemic. And this was early on in the pandemic. And it's caused a pretty big uproar everywhere.
Yeah, so that's been in the news and been especially today on when we're recording this, recording on Sunday for Wednesday. One of the things that's kind of scary about that is that he puts in his book that from the people he's talked to in the intelligence agency that we have like over a 50% chance is what the intelligence agency is reporting of war, of global war, like World War III type of war, maybe even nuclear war. Because of what's happening in Ukraine, the Middle East, and also what's happening with this election and the consequences of who wins this election, because no matter who you like the most, it's pretty much a tight race. Now, I still have my own opinions about who's going to win, but it's very, very tight right now. What do you say about that?
The geopolitics of this is pretty tense and heated, and it will be an interesting thing to watch. Very glad that I have anxiety medication for it. So I really encourage other people to also hopefully medicate legally and safely during this time, because it is going to be pretty rough and a little bit scary for some people. It is that way because Trump has been said that he wanted to pull out from NATO. He doesn't agree with the whole principle of it. He doesn't agree with paying for it and then having to protect and work with other countries that are part of NATO, which is very frustrating for those that understand what NATO is all about. And NATO is one of the reasons why we haven't had World War III yet. I mean, we have gotten close multiple times, but it's still very scary because once, if we pull out of NATO and other countries start fighting other countries, especially if they're outside NATO or a non-NATO country goes after a NATO country, it can cause a lot of issues, another global war. And we're very close to that, like you said, with the Middle East, with Ukraine, and probably other places, because North Korea, Iran is really pushing buttons that could make it far outside the Middle East. They could actually go towards other locations. So it can be a pretty scary situation.
Yeah, and now Bob Woodward, if people don't know, he's very respected, and he focuses on presidents since Nixon. He's one of the dynamic duo of what we know as what the book was called, All the President's Men, probably his first great book. He was one of the guys that basically broke the Watergate story.
Yes. When
nobody pretty much knew about it. Him and Carl Bernstein worked together on that story. And when it hit the Washington Post, it pretty much blew up and changed history and pretty much forced Nixon out of the White House. So he's pretty good at getting to the bottom of things and actually a very good researcher. And at 81 years old, he hasn't lost a step and gotten any nothing but better with what he does. That's something I think is really, really important to note. He has said in an interview today, actually, on Sunday morning on CBS, he actually said that from his experience going all the way back to Nixon, he thinks Trump is the worst president that he's ever researched or pretty much investigated.
Yeah. It's and not many people might remember or even know about that what's going on between Bob Woodward and Trump. There's actually a pretty big beef between them, and that's from a 2020 book that was published in late 2020, and I believe it's called Rage. And what he did was he written a book covering a lot of things, especially with his interviews from Trump, and he had recorded these interviews. Well, when Rage was coming up to also be converted to an audio book, Bob Woodward used the actual interview tapes, the audio, and put it into the audiobooks. Trump sued him for the royalties over that. I believe almost $50 million for that. And I don't know what's the end result of the lawsuit. I'm still trying to find that one because it was originally filed in New York. And then late last year, it was moved to Florida. And ever since late last year, I have not been able to find an actual resolve of that. So that might still be ongoing. So there is some beef going on between those two figures. And that's what Trump is claiming, is that Bob Woodward made the story up because Trump sued him for money. And so he's trying to get back at him.
Well, the thing is that even the Kremlin has admitted that they received it. I mean, there wasn't anything. I mean, the Kremlin itself said, yeah, we got it. And they support Trump.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they want him to win because that's no better ally they could have, you know, with what's going on in the world today. So with their actions, they would hope that Trump wins. So they don't really care how it affects our politics or how it affects our country. I mean, they'll say, yeah, we got those, we got the test and that. But the sad part about it is that when other people, even J.B. Pritzker, the governor of Illinois here in Illinois, called them out and said, hey, you know, we were back in those days. I mean, I needed that. That's what we needed in our state. And that's what governors needed and mayors needed all over the country. We couldn't even get those types of kits. And so for you to, you know, and it wasn't just, I mean, from my understanding, I could be wrong about this part of it. So I don't report anything. So why don't we even go into that portion of it? But from my understanding, this was actually something that they could use to, I guess, expand testing in their areas. So if they had the information or had the actual kit that they needed, or the test kits that they needed, they could actually do a lot of good in their states or their communities or things like that. And so for this to go to an adversary, and then not only have to be an adversary, but for someone to use it for their own personal use, not even for their own citizens.
Yeah. And, also for reference, the Ukraine war didn't happen until Biden was in office. So this was prior to the Ukraine war, just to set the timeline. So those that not sure when that war started, it hadn't started yet. Russia had not yet invaded Ukraine, although there was stuff that happened in 2014. But at that time, they weren't actively fighting Ukraine at the time. But there was still a lot of issues that was going on with Russia at the time. Many people, they say they're a communist country, but they're actually pretty fascist, pretty far right. And so that's probably one of the reasons why a lot of the alt-right representatives and other politicians in America actually now support Russia. Because
technically Russia is supposed to be a democratic nation.
Yeah, they're supposed
to be a democratic nation, but there is so much corruption and the oligarchs that pretty much finance Putin and also support him. You look at Putin's rise to power. He was appointed by Boris Yeltsin. Boris Yeltsin then says, "This is my guy." Boris Yeltsin was a serious alcoholic and was running the country during when perestroika and everything was going on back in the late 90s and things. Couldn't even half the time he would show up to meetings with the American leaders. I don't know if it was Bush or if it was Reagan. It was probably Bush at the time, Bush Senior, W. Bush, not W. Bush, but Herbert Walker Bush. I'm sorry, who actually he would tell you this guy's drunk, and then he appoints Putin as his successor because that was the only guy that could basically handle his business. But the problem was his goal was never to be a democratic nation, but to rebuild the Soviet Union. He was a Kremlin guy. He was a KGB guy. Yeah.
It was, that was one of the things that had gone on. Well, it's also not a fair democratic election if your opponents are killed or found guilty of something that they really don't have any evidence of, and then they can't actually run. So you don't really have an actual opponent to go against Putin.
Right.
So that's not a fair and democratic election right
exactly.
there. So
precisely.
It doesn't really work out. It's very frustrating, and it's very scary when Trump has said similar things so that he's like, if you vote for me, you don't have to vote ever again.
And you are the first person that has caught on to that. I've mentioned that before, but not on our show, but I mentioned that before. If you listen to him, he said that more than once. And I've heard him say it more than once. He said it, vote for me. You'll never have to vote for anybody else again. I promise you, you'll never have to do whatever again.
Yeah. JD Vance has also made similar reference in the last couple of weeks too. So it's quite interesting how this is starting to sound more like other countries that don't have the actual fair and honest elections anymore. It's pretty scary when you start thinking about that. One of the things that I find it very frustrating for this whole situation is that President Trump is then found to have lied again. And it's like, how can you trust a politician or somebody in office, in an elected office, that does lie? Because to me, if you lie to me, that means I know you have the potential to lie to me again. So how can I trust you again?
And that's interesting as well, because because people that support Trump, and I believe it or not, I'm around a lot of Trump supporters. So what people will tell me all the time is that, well, all politicians lie. It's just that, his lies, how is his lies any worse than the other guy's lies or that lady's lies and things like that? But they'll point to, and this is my concern, is that if Trump does win, he's like a person that gives out candy and does whatever he needs to do to be liked and does whatever he needs to do to look good. But what he's actually doing is undermining the whole process and actually setting you up for failure down the road. It's like if I have a child, I let him eat all the candy and ice cream and all the cake that he wants to eat. And I let him, drink all the soda he wants to drink. And I let him have, 18, you can have beer now, son. I want a beer, have a beer. That you're just setting that person up for a devastating life. That child will love you and think you're the greatest person ever in history. But the reality is that the thing is his economic policies, the changes he's done with our legal system, and his lack of attention to the things that really, really matter. Like, for example, when COVID hit, his lack of attention, thinking it was no big deal. Those types of things seriously have major effects on the country. But the problem is that most of his supporters can't connect the dots. They don't see when the shoe fell. It didn't fall on Trump's second term because he wasn't reelected. The shoe fell on Biden's doorstep.
Yes, it did. And the other thing about it is that when a particular party, a particular organization wants to take over and they don't want to do the actual, democratic, fair way of getting elected, what they also will do to also help with the base is to discredit the actual organization, the government system as a whole. Because if you don't trust the government, then how are you going to trust anything else that's going to be happening? But you could trust me, they say. Right. And then you're not going to want a democracy anymore because you don't trust it. You don't have faith in it. When you lose the faith, that's when the whole system is going to fail and then have to shift and change. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of people believe that we're actually right. Well, actually, this is something that J.D. Vance has said, and he referenced that we are at the very end of a republican, which is like the Romans, right before they switched from their republic to the actual empire. And, when they had their first emperor, everybody had discredited. They lost their faith in the republic, in everything that had built that great, interesting country that had pretty much, there was nothing like it in the world at the time. And that's what actually our founding fathers had modeled after, was after the Romans in the republic. So if we discredit again, we're going to run into having an empire. And I'm a Star Wars fan, and I remember the empire wasn't that great for everybody. They took advantage. They killed many people. It was horrible. And the thing is that happened again when the Romans in the Roman Empire, and they lost that. Everything that they had good going for them was gone because they lost the faith of it and the trust. And after that is when a lot of things happen. And so that part is really scary. A lot of people are very scared about the politics of that. And yes, a lot of politicians lie. A lot of politicians are technically protected when they lie because there's a certain clause in the Constitution called the speech and debate clause. So anything that they say, they can't be held to perjury, which is really frustrating because the thing is that they can just straight up lie, like they've said with the PACT Act, because I like to use that as a reference, because they said that there's pork barrel spending that's not going to go to veterans. But if you go into that actual bill to look up for the money, the $200 million, they said that was going to pork barrel spending. That was actually going to medical facilities. If you go through the bill and read it, you could see the truth. But Senator Pat Toomey, Senator Ted Cruz, they just straight up lied to people. But his constituents believe that, the Democrats and the liberals lie. So I'm going to trust what Ted Cruz says. And that's when you lose the faith with things. You have to really be able to reference and check what people are saying, no matter who they are. I mean, I'm not telling you to trust the Democrats. I'm telling you to trust your eyes and actually look up the information that they talk about. And now that we've got evidence that Trump lied, and with the Kremlin actually saying the opposite of what he's saying, how are you going to trust Trump now?
And then now we also have this idea that that where, or at least what the court has said is that, presidents are pretty much immune to, anything to do with presidential acts is immune to any kind of prosecution. So even you can't even hold Trump accountable for treason for doing what he did with the test kits. And we said it before in this show, before Trump was elected. Now I called it that Trump would probably be elected. I said he was going to be elected, and he was. I didn't think he was going to be reelected, but right now I'm still kind of iffy because it's still a tightrope. It's a very much, it's not a done deal for Kamala Harris. She has a lot of support, but it's just a fact that she is, because the economy is not where people want, and it's very difficult. Politicians have to understand is that you can't tell somebody that they're not hungry.
Right.
You can't tell somebody they don't feel pain. And that's a surefire way to lose an election, is if you try to tell somebody that they don't feel what they actually feel. They just want you to fix it. Now, what might help is that if you explain why they're in the pain or why they're hungry, and tell them a not clear plan as to how you're going to fix it, that's a different thing. Now you got a conversation going. But the problem, like you mentioned, people don't go and read those bills. They don't go and look and do the research. And there's so much misinformation out there that it's hard to even find out what is real and what's not real.
Yeah. And honestly, every time I see an accusation or a statement about something, especially if it's in that little meme picture that you see on social media and has zero references, I screenshot, look at Google pictures and do the Google search and ask, legit? And it'll tell you, a lot of sites actually say now whether that is true or false. You can also use key phrases to see whether it's really true or false. It's also
I still have a problem with that because that could be hijacked. I mean, if you're looking at a website, and now you're going to trust because somebody said, "Oh, this is legit." I mean, anybody can hijack that or fake that as well.
But you need to trust the ones that have the references. Because there are different things that are coming out there, like for FEMA, when it came for the Hurricane Helene. Yes, you do get $750, but that is the first installment you get. That's not all you get. They're like, okay, let me give you the $750 to pay for the food and water and diapers that you need to get you set up. And then when you fill the rest of the paperwork out, we will get you what you need after that. So that statement that Trump said, it is partially true, but he didn't say the rest of it. And that's the thing. And then there was money that went from FEMA to DHS, but that money didn't come out of the actual disaster relief funds that people are receiving for Hurricane Helene. So that money that's going to hurricane victims wasn't taken out to go to immigrants. So it was partially true, but it also was partially false. But you need to check the references of the references, which is annoying. But those things that actually search and try to say whether it's legit or not, or whether it's true or false, always try to make sure it has as many details as possible to explain it. And that's the reason why it's really important to go into those details.
Stephanie Kalota, always a pleasure to have you on our show.
Thank you so much, guys.
All right, thanks a lot. This is America's Heroes Group. Make sure you like and subscribe, and check out our website, americashg.org, and look at us on YouTube. Leave your comments, because that way we can make better shows for you. This is Sean Claiborne. We'll see you in the next segment.
Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Market, advertise, and sponsor your business with Vietnam veteran Cliff Kelly and America's Heroes Group, where information and resources are intentionally disseminated via radio, print, and social media. Call our office for more details at 312-803-2618.
Ken Jennings. All of us here at Jeopardy want to thank you for your service to our nation. We truly honor and appreciate you, and what's more, we're looking for contestants like you to play on our show. So head to Jeopardy.com now and take the Anytime test, and we're looking forward to seeing you soon right here on the Alex Trebek stage. I'm Ken Jennings. All of
Voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Market, advertise, and sponsor your business with Vietnam veteran Cliff Kelly and America's Heroes Group, where information and resources are intentionally disseminated via radio, print, and social media. Call our office for more details at 312-803-2618.
I'm Ken Jennings. All of us here at Jeopardy want to thank you for your service to our nation. We truly honor and appreciate you, and what's more, we're looking for contestants like you to play on our show. So head to Jeopardy.com now and take the Anytime test, and we're looking forward to seeing you soon right here on the Alex Trebek stage.
Where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Well, market, advertise, and sponsor your business with Vietnam veteran Cliff Kelly and America's Heroes Group, where information and resources are intentionally disseminated via radio, print, and social media. Call our office for more details at 312-803-2618. Market, advertise, and sponsor your business with Vietnam veteran Cliff Kelly and America.
I'm Ken Jennings. All of us here at Jeopardy want to thank you for your service to our nation. We truly honor and appreciate you, and what's more, we're looking for contestants like you to play on our show. So head to Jeopardy.com now and take the Anytime test, and we're looking forward to seeing you soon right here on the Alex Trebek stage.
Breast Cancer, Mental Health, and National Disability Domestic Violence Awareness Month. This recording is for Wednesday, October 16th, 2024. And we have with us today someone you've known very well with us for a long, long time. That is Keisha L. Jackson. She's an Air Force veteran and a family caregiver advocate. We want to talk about is pre-planning for tough decisions. Sometimes these things we need to talk about because we have tough decisions to make when we're caring for people that we love. And actually giving that attention to detail that they deserve. How you doing, Keisha?
I am doing well, Sean. How are you doing?
Doing pretty good. So what do you have to tell us about those tough decisions? How do you pre-plan to make those tough decisions?
Well,
what are the tough decisions we have to make, first of all?
Before I get into talking about the tough decisions, with October being Disability Awareness Month, I just wanted to acknowledge all of those family and professional caregivers that are out there. Some of them are providing care 24 hours a day. You know, the last time I was on the podcast, I had someone on that was sharing resources and talking about different things to help family members with special needs. So I just want to celebrate them, although they're definitely not looking to be celebrated, but to acknowledge them during this Disability Awareness Month. And with that, I wanted to say it's so interesting how we're talking. Well, I'm talking about Disability Awareness Month right now, and something came in my feed the other day about a person that is supposed to be an advocate for people with disability. How she takes them out shopping, and she was taking them to a store, and she wind up having them steal for her. They were stealing. She had a bag. And they were stealing, she had them stealing clothes and shoes and sneakers and other miscellaneous things. And she was sentenced. So, on one hand, we're mentioning this Disability Awareness Month and celebrating those. But then we have those that are actually supposed to be helping and providing. And to find something so disturbing like that, it just really, breaks your heart.
So what types of things can people do to prepare for those events when you get older? Or you might be disabled, and you have to then think about how do you pay the bills every day? And then on top of that, you need medical attention.
Yeah, some of the things that it's always going to be pre-planning. The emphasis is talking to people about pre-planning, not to wait until you get to that particular time. Is to try to sit down, have those conversations with your family. If you can have those conversations with your family, maybe talking to an elder care attorney. Learning about resources that are out there, talking to other people maybe on your job, find out if your job has FMLA. All of these different things are things that you can do to be able to help you prepare for those very difficult decisions that you have to make.
I think long-term care planning is something that's very important, I think, for a lot of people. And something that people don't think about. There's a lot of creative ways now that people have, that financial services have and things like that. That can help people plan for long-term care. It's not as expensive as people might think it might be, although if you don't have the right things in place, I think it can be very, very expensive and sometimes even bankrupt you, because as we know with Medicaid, To get into a medicated facility, do you want to go to a medicated facility? Is that going to be good enough for you? Or do you want to go into the facility that you actually want to go into, where, you know, it's clean, the people are attentive, the nurses are actually skilled, and the doctors are taking care of you in a proper way? What are some of the things that you would tell people as to how to begin to make those plans?
One of the first things I would tell people to do is talk to your loved one, whether your loved one is in a position of needing care at that particular time, or it's just a young couple or a parent and their child, to be able to have those conversations very early on, even before it's time. Sometimes I've told people to help bridge the start of that conversation is maybe turn on a movie that has some of the similar topic that you want to talk about caring for someone, or maybe something about death, to be able to bridge those conversations from the very beginning, to be able to talk about them, to be able to talk about the finances, about pens, you know, about what are your medical needs, who are your doctor, you know, be able to jot all of those things down. The most pre-planning that you can do is the more it's going to help you later on when the time is coming, is needed.
I like that idea of like using that as an icebreaker. You know, if you want to talk about something, maybe, hey, let's go watch this movie, whatever. And I heard this was a great movie. It's got a great actor in it or something like that. And then talk about the things in the movie that, you know, pertain to your life. Because if you can watch something that's really important, maybe you have a family member that's going through Alzheimer's or has the early onset stages of Alzheimer's. I actually had a conversation with a young lady not too long ago, and she's going through this with her sister. Because her sister is starting to have really advanced stages of Alzheimer's. And it's not only that, but it was exacerbated by, you know, lifestyle choices, things like that, alcoholism, you know, things along those lines. Now, the thing is that they're having a difficulty talking about that, bringing that subject up, because the person that needs to care oftentimes doesn't want to talk about it. So when people start to put up those defense, that shield, and start to kind of try to change the subject, or maybe they don't want to talk about it altogether, how do you overcome that?
Sometimes you let it just kind of rest for that particular time. You know, like, okay, maybe you make a little inroad by asking a question today and you get a little bit of answer. Or a lot of times I've shared with people to not make it between you and the individual that you're talking about, but come up with a fictitious person or somebody at my job, but you're really talking about your situation. So they're thinking that they're talking about someone else and not themselves. I find that to be really, really helpful. But sometimes you just really have to step in and take over and say, put those things in place, because it could be, the person could be at a place where there's no option to say, well, it's going to be what you want, because the care that could be needed could be way past what you can provide for that particular person.
What are some of the things on your mind when you think about care? I know you had a family member that you took care of. And why don't you talk about that a little bit to kind of remind people what you went through with your mother, but also what are some of the things that people need to be thinking about? Because sometimes it blindsides a lot of family members. They might have, mom might be great, or someone coming back from service seem to be great, but then they start to decline, and then all of a sudden it's just like a bus hits you, because now they're in a state where they really do need care, but you weren't even anticipating it. You may not have been paying attention to it.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying. The more you can pre-plan, if you can, the best. But sometimes you don't have that opportunity. You know, whether it's Alzheimer's, a person can have a heart attack. I had a friend that was diagnosed with cancer, and then in a matter of almost weeks or days, the person was no longer with us. And so sometimes you're forced to be right there in the very moment, making those decisions. So you just either have to, again, try to prepare as best as you can. But if not, just you have to go right in and be aggressive and saying, look, these are some things that I have to do. I cannot do this by myself. I need to know this. I need to know that. I need, you know, and just try to be a little bit more forceful, because there's no other way that you have but to get it done. And sometimes that's not just with the individual. Sometimes that could be with the medical staff. And that's why, again, I'll keep going back to preparation is so important, because depending on your relationship, you may not be able to just walk into a hospital. You may not be able to walk into a nursing home and say, I'm this person, tell me, you know, because there could be something that person has already put in place. So again, I mean, I just cannot stress the importance of trying to prepare as much as possible. But when you can't, just use your wisdom, talking to the doctors and different things as well, to try to make the best decisions that you can for that individual at that particular time.
If you don't mind, tell me a little bit more about how you cared for your mother and how you broached this subject with your mom.
Yeah. So when my mother was diagnosed with stage 4 inoperable lung cancer, I had no idea that she was even sick. And one of my brothers called me, and I wound up getting in the car and driving to Philly where she was at, and going into the hospital. And when I walked into the room and the doctor came into the room, that's when I found out that she had stage 4 inoperable lung cancer. So that was my immediate onset. I didn't have time. I hadn't talked to my mom about preparing for anything. And so I asked the doctor, what can we expect at this stage? And he said, the only thing that you could expect is life support. Now, because of my faith and my belief in God, I talked to my mom about a couple different things. I said, I know what the doctor is saying, but what are you believing? We're going to believe God for whatever you're believing. And so that was a part of a journey that we went on with my mom. But my mother did not want to come to where I live. She wanted to stay in Philly. But when I would go to her house, I saw how she could not take care of herself. And my mother was very, very big on cleaning, making sure her house was immaculate. She was very big on cooking. There was like cans all over the place. And so I told her that she had gotten to a place where she could not live by herself. She did not want to. So when my mother, I said, so I had to kind of trick her. I said, how about coming to stay with me for a weekend? And she came down, and I was so grateful. I hate to say it, but I was so grateful that she left her pain medicine back home. And because she left her pain medicine, I wound up having to take her to the emergency to get her pain medicine and different things like that. So it was through that process where that was the beginning of me able to transition her to where I live and to be able to take care of her until she went into in-resident hospice.
Wow. I think it's really important that every family needs to understand. I have to share a little bit of my knowledge, but the thing of it is that families need to have in place immediately, particularly seniors. You need to have power of attorney. If you're married, you need to have power of attorney of your spouse. So if something happens, either one of you can step in and take care of the other person's affairs.
Yeah.
Part two is you need to also have a power of attorney, a contingent power of attorney, which is someone younger than you. Because if you have a husband and wife and they're both in their 80s, it's going to be hard for one to take care of the other.
Yeah.
So you need someone who's 20, 30 years younger than you, younger than the older person, the person that might need care, so that they can really have the energy and hopefully the time and the resources to go in there and help you with those little things. But like you said, access is critical, because if you're not the person who's the power of attorney, you cannot access the information. You can't talk to the doctors. You can't talk to the Comcast when they want to close your cable bill or whatever, or turn off your cable. You can't talk to the mortgage company when they want to foreclose because the payment hasn't been made. Only person that can do that is a power of attorney or legal guardian. Mm-hmm. So I think that's really, really important. People need to understand. And then there's two different things. There's power of attorney for property, and there's power of attorney for medical. Okay, mm-hmm. And I'm not an attorney, so I'm not giving legal advice, mm-hmm. but it's important that people need to research these things, understand what they are, because it's pretty much self-evident that these are things that people need. You can almost argue that every person needs this in their life in case something happens. You might get hit by a bus tomorrow.
Yeah. And something that goes with that, it's not always the caregiver. Sometimes it's the person. It could be the family member. It could be the spouse. It could be the child saying, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about death. I don't want to talk about, and that makes it hard as well, because sometimes the person is trying to put those things in place, but the family member or the friend or the neighbor, whoever doesn't want to talk about it. So that can make it difficult as well.
Yeah, I think it's really important. And even for people to really just kind of, it's like you said, it's a tough conversation to have, but you have to be honest with yourself. I think at some point you have to realize that, and be humble and say, hey, I might need help one day. And so a lot of this falls on the individual, just realizing that you need to start researching and getting the information as to what you need to do when something happens. And I think in a future show we need to do is actually do a full blown, show on what are the steps that you actually need to take legally, financially, things along those lines. So we have a lot of people that we can access here at America's Heroes Group that can actually talk about those things. But one of the critical parts of it is that, people, as you mentioned, people need to be prepared, but you have to start doing the work ahead of time. When it rains, it's too late to get an umbrella. Mm-hmm. If you're caught out in the rain and you're out way out, someplace in the wilderness or whatever, and it's raining, it's too late to go grab a raincoat because you're in the rain already. Your car's getting wet, you're getting wet. I mean, so you have to plan and think ahead. What is the weather going to be like? Just like like I said, if you have to get to that point where you have to be be able to let go and say, well, what if something happens to me? Who is going to take care of me? Who's my team around me that's going to support me? Having those conversations with your family members. And even parents, oftentimes, what I've seen is they assume that the kids will, as you mentioned, sometimes the kid doesn't want to talk about it or the child doesn't want to talk about it. Sometimes the parents just assume that the kids will be there. And then not understanding or realizing that the child or their son or daughter may not be prepared or willing to be that person, that go-to person. They may not be emotionally prepared. They may not be financially prepared. They may not have the time to do it.
Yeah. And all of those goes in the reason why, we keep going back to saying to try to have these conversations very early on, because it has been known that a person that is caring for a loved one, out-of-pocket expenses are enormous, because a lot of times, because they haven't done the preparing, or maybe through the local area agency on aging, or some of the other local places that through the local resources that they could learn about that may be able to help them, they don't do that because they're doing everything out of their own pocket. Mm-hmm. And then right now it's like, oh, okay, well, I'll go and buy some cough syrup, and I'll go do this and I'll supplement this, or I'll buy them this to eat. And then those bills, they continually come in. Then you're missing work, or you may have to take off work, or you may not be able to have the FMLA, or it may not be long enough that you need. And now you're like, wait a minute, you find that you're being financially spiraling out of control. And it's difficult for you as well. Whether you're wealthy or not, it doesn't matter. It definitely happens.
Yeah, it's definitely something, but once again, there are resources and tools out there that people can access. We can't go into those things now because there's a whole bunch of YouTube and regulatory things that we can't talk about without the proper disclosures and things along those lines. But the thing is that those things are out there, and there's resources and tools available to people that can help them with those resources, whether it be through having the right Medicare or understanding how Medicaid works, the difference between Medicare and Medicaid. If you go into a facility with this Medicaid, you got to have less than $2,000 in assets. And they also look back, typically in most states, some states even more, but 5 years, they look back minimum. Most in every state, pretty much the minimum is 5 years to go back and see how you handled your assets. So if you're wealthy, and then some states, like in our state, where you're in Virginia, I came from Maryland, they can even put the onus on the children sometimes. Yeah. If the person goes into a nursing home and they don't have the money to pay for it, but the kids have assets.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that people don't know about that law that is out there, that they could legally they can come after you to cover those costs. And so you didn't realize that because you may have been not involved with it, and now you may be getting some notice saying, hey, you owe us this amount of money for your loved one that was in this assisted living facility or nursing home or different places like that. So, but with that, it's so important, not just the preparing from that particular place, but this is something that I'm always stressing as well. Get involved with your loved one, whether it's at the hospital, whether it's in hospice, whether it's in a rehabilitation place, whether it's in a nursing home, wherever it is. The more you can get involved, to know what's going on, to be there, to show your presence, it's the best thing to do to help your family member, but also to help you as well.
And I think also as people that are taking care of veterans that are coming back, that a lot of veterans aren't that old and need caregiving. You have a lot of veterans out there that are injured or have different types of disabilities that need caregiving. And so for those families, you got to start getting involved with the VA early. And veterans, you got to also take the ownership yourself and start looking into what programs does the VA have, so that way you can start to access those things, or at least get the ball rolling before you actually need them. Find out what's available, go out there and start getting your paperwork, connect with organizations like the DAV, disabled American veterans. Make those phone calls so you have at least educate yourself, and then you're already, so if something does start to happen, your family members are kind of prepared to a certain extent to start getting you into the programs that exist so you can get the care that you need and be able to pay for those things if you have to.
Yeah, I know some of the people and spouses in the military, they are briefed into a lot of different things in terms of, being a family caregiver, in terms of provider, of holding down while maybe the spouse is deployed or different things like that. But then sometimes you have that, whoever that particular individual is that has been deployed or may have been wounded or different things like that. Like I was saying about like my mom and different other people, they don't want to talk about it. And so even if an individual doesn't want to talk about it, like you said, it doesn't stop a person from going into websites like the VA and beginning to learn. Nobody has to know that you're doing that. There's
Right.
800 numbers or 888 numbers that you can call to get in particular information, and even say that maybe I'm calling on behalf of trying to get information because of my husband or my wife or my son or my daughter. They were in, here or wherever, and they don't want to talk about it. Is there anything that I can find out, or what are some of the things that I could do now to help put in place for my loved one and maybe myself or our dependents or different things like that?
So once again, we're talking a lot about the problem, bringing awareness to the situation. I think we owe it to the audience to do a follow-up to this and do a part 2 where we talk about the solutions and things and strategies that you can actually put in place to actually that you can help put yourself in a better situation. So when the unexpected does happen, you're a lot more prepared versus being bum rushed by by a problem and not having any kind of resources or tools around you. The first part of we were talking about is at least getting educated and having the conversations. So if you start having the conversations, that at least starts to get your mind thinking about what types of things should I be thinking about. What if my mother loses her home or my father loses their home? What would happen in that situation? What if they get into a situation where they're disabled and they can't work, because a lot of seniors, as we have to admit, a lot of seniors are still working in their 60s and 70s today.
Yeah.
You don't hear a lot of the politicians talking about that today, but you have a lot of seniors that are working past Social Security age. And if they were to lose that job because they got hurt or they were sick or something along those lines, that could be a financial catastrophe for that family, for that senior.
Yeah, there's a lot of need. There's a lot of need even in the workplace, to be able to have the different conversations like that. And sometimes you have coworkers that don't want to share, don't want to talk about, maybe they have a loved one that they're going home and that they're taking care of, or financially it's a burden for them until it gets to the point where it's absolutely too late, and now their finances are impacted, and now they're torn with, they have to work extra hours to try to see if they can get overtime. But at the same time, maybe that loved one is so in a place where now they have to spend more time or taking off work. So now you're struggling, and what do you do? What do you do to help your family? There's a lot of sandwich individuals. There are parents that are taking care of their children, and then there are parents that are taking care of their parents, and so they're trying to figure this all out. I got to take my son or my daughter to maybe basketball or dance recital or whatever, but then I got to take my mom or my dad to get their dialysis. And so you're going through all of these different things. And then it always comes back to the other part. You really don't have a lot of time for yourself, but then you look at your finances and you say, well, what am I supposed to do?
Now, you alluded to faith a couple of times. Did you seek the church or seek any kind of aid or comfort through people that might be at your church or maybe in a community that are faith driven?
Oh, most definitely. So definitely a person strong in faith. And I had different people coming to my house. When I was caring for my mother, it was a different time than it is now. I really believe that I would not do what I did back then. I wound up having people to be able to come in and sit with my mother for a few hours. I found them, like, maybe some of them was through word of mouth. Some of them was when my church family couldn't come, and maybe 2 or 3 hours, and I would pay them. My mother, because it goes back to the thing, I had to work because I had to help financially take care of my mother. And so I was kind of torn. I was stuck where people were coming in, that weren't always church members, sitting with my mom, but thank God nothing was stolen. You know, although I have had friends that have talked about people coming into their homes and there was stuff that was taken for them. But yeah, my faith was definitely a big part of it. My church was a very big part of it. And as a matter of fact, through a lot of the prayers and again, where I'm at spiritually, through praying and fasting, I did a lot of different things, and God revealed a lot of different things to help me with my mom. In terms of with wisdom and talking to her, in terms of medications, in terms of natural things that I was able to give her, to the point where when she was in hospice, the doctor kept saying, "What are you doing?" And my mother would always joke and say, "Don't let him know, you know, what was going on."
Why didn't you want them to know?
Because she knew that they were giving her the morphine. They were giving her the different things. I would get off work and I would be on the phone. I would go on the internet and do research for like 8 hours straight of what could I use to substitute this. And so I was finding all of these different things. I was giving her like chamomile oil. And I don't want to say it to make it seem like I'm suggesting to others to do the same thing, right? Because it's a trial and error. And it could be very scary because my brother actually thought I was trying to kill my mother because I wasn't giving her some of the medications or some of the research of the different things that I had found. But she didn't want them to know that she was taking those things. She just wanted them to think that she was on this regimen that they had set out for her.
Okay. So now when your mother started to go into decline and she was in the hospice, emotionally, how did that strike you, and how did you maintain the strength to keep going?
100%, it was my faith. And because I actually wrote it in a book and had wrote a screenplay about it. A lot of different things happened, but again, it goes back to where I'm at spiritually and my faith in God and different things that He showed me and that He revealed to me that were so profound. Things that happened with my mother. So I got my strength, first of all, through my faith, through others that were there that were helping me. But again, just where I was at with God, there was dreams that I had that they came true. And so it was like my steps were being ordered through the whole process.
Okay. We're about to wrap up, but don't drop off the stream yet, because I want to get your information, your email, things like that, so we can communicate the plan for the next show. So I want to go over some of the solutions.
Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Well, market, advertise, and sponsor your business with Vietnam veteran Cliff Kelly and America's Heroes Group, where information and resources are intentionally disseminated via radio, print, and social media. Call our office for more details at 312-803-2618. Market, advertise, and sponsor your business.
I'm Ken Jennings. All of us here at Jeopardy want to thank you for your service to our nation. We truly honor and appreciate you, and what's more, we're looking for contestants like you to play on our show. So head to Jeopardy.com now and take the Anytime test, and we're looking forward to seeing you soon right here on the Alex Trebek stage.
Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally.
and welcome to It's October 16th, and we have the pleasure of always having Nima Contra of Gigi Crowder, our programming partner, who's been with us for 2 years on the show, and she's bringing their CEO to the Roundtable. This is a special show. So I am extremely, extremely happy to meet you, Mr. Dan Gilson. How are you?
I am doing well, and so good to meet you, Glenda. And it is so wonderful to be with this incredible leader that you get to partner with, Gigi Crowder. She does so much on behalf of NAMI and for the community that she supports. And thank you for this partnership. And looking forward to the conversation.
Absolutely. So I had the pleasure of meeting Gigi over 2 years ago through another talk show that she came on, Family Caregivers with Keisha L. Jackson. It was so impactful. I called her after I asked Keisha's permission, if I could, to follow up. And so conversing with Gigi, I had a more in-depth time to listen to what Nima Contra, the bigger scope and all the aspects of everything that you were guys. And I didn't have no idea, sir, that it was this hard, this large, this big. And at this point in time, from 2 years ago, this needed, because currently our metrics indicate, may I call you Dan?
You can please call me Dan.
Thank you, sir. So Mr. Dan, our current metrics indicate that we are in 1,152 cities. We're in all 8 major cities. We have a podcast download that we started October of this year, 4 years ago, 2020, of 5,770,000 and some change. We're in 72 countries. So I'm saying that to say that the Nima Contra mental health component has plugged in a major hole. Because Mr. Dan, think about it. People are concerned about the economy. People are concerned about Wall Street. They're concerned, but you're not really getting the number one concern that we all have right now is mental health. You can have all these wonderful things, but if you don't have good mental health, what is it? It means nothing. So yeah. So I said to Gigi, and she totally agreed, that people need to be aware of the total scope, because you guys are all over the country. And yes, truthfully speaking, before 2 years ago, Mr. Dan, I just wasn't aware. So this is an opportunity to really, really broaden the scope on our huge level in terms of making sure it's totally impactful from all corners of the world. So
well, that's what I want to do. That's what we want to do. We want to change the narrative of meeting someone that says, I wish I'd known about NAMI sooner.
Exactly.
They needed NAMI, but they didn't know about NAMI when they needed NAMI.
Exactly.
And I can tell you very quickly a story right out of COVID, right after COVID. My first visit to one of our organizations was to the state of Michigan for a conference. I met a woman on the elevator, and I try to say hi to everybody, and I thought everyone was there for the NAMI convention. So I asked the woman on the elevator, are you here for the NAMI convention? She said to me, what was NAMI? I started explaining a little bit about NAMI. She looked up and she started crying. Yeah. And I said, why are you crying? And she says, I am a visiting nurse. I almost didn't take this assignment. My daughter is 24. She lives with schizophrenia. She's been in and out of the justice system. She's in a home right now. My husband and I are now divorced, and I've navigated all of this with my daughter by myself. I wish I'd known about NAMI sooner. And she was visiting from Pennsylvania to Michigan to do this work. And she's a nurse. She did not know about NAMI. The lived experience is so critically important. And what Gigi does and gives of herself and her team, this This is about turning pain into purpose and purpose.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Mr. Dan, I could share a story with you as well, because Gigi was very instrumental in just staying in contact with me when I lost my dad. Okay, I'm not gonna become emotional. When I lost my dad last year to a massive heart attack. You don't understand until that happens what that feels like and how easily you can become disconnected mentally. Mentally, you can just become a little unbalanced and don't even realize it. So seriously, Mr. Dan, I have to share, because when you share your story, you help somebody else. That grief, that mourning can become very heavy if you don't understand and have some type of connection with someone else you could probably talk to. I prayed my way out, but Gigi also followed up with me, seeing how I was doing, staying in contact with me, making sure I was okay. Because for like 2 weeks, I was like walking in a zone of, it felt scary. It felt very isolated. I didn't want to eat. I was just laying down. I was sleeping and I was just walking through a maze, because I had never experienced that before. I didn't know what it felt like. So yes, mental health means everything. The balance, Mr. Dan, is everything. So I truly see us, America's Heroes Group, being able to partner with Nima on a bigger scale of becoming hopefully a media partner, so that you can bring in more from where you are, so people can see, oh, they're not only in California, but they're here. They're here, so they can easily be connected. But I just want to thank Gigi, because for 2 years, she introduced Nima. For 2 years, she has brought in agenda, subject matters, panelists, and it has touched our audience because the numbers prove it. She is a significant part of what we do, and her podcast has been in the top 5 or 10 since we have had her on. So it is making a difference. So I just wanted to acknowledge her to you, Mr. Dan, because she's made that difference, and she's introduced Nima. Yeah.
On behalf of the National Alliance on Mental Illness, it is wonderful to get the opportunity to work with and for Gigi and all of the executive directors that are out there in the communities, over 650 communities across the U.S. doing the work. We like to say that in these communities, our leaders and our folks in the communities, they know the DNA of the community. So they know what the community needs. We have support groups, we have programs, and we deliver all of that. And we do much more than that because we're in the communities. And I'll repeat it. Just about everyone that does this work on behalf of NAMI it does it from a position of, first of all, pain that they've turned into purpose, that they've turned into passion. And then we go from there. And that passion becomes power. I'm so sorry for the loss of your dad last year. I lost my mom at 76, and she had a massive heart attack. And I was with her when she had her heart attack. And just as a point of information, she was 76 years young. And we were playing some music while she was there in the hospital bed. And the last song she heard was Before I Let Go.
Wow.
So if that's anything that's got any power to you, I just wanted to share that because there's power in sharing our story.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. It connects along with the healing of the journey starts with the connection of the healing. Yeah. Isn't that something? So,
and the World Health Organization, actually, it was Dr. Satcher that coined the phrase, and the World Health Organization adopted it. And Dr. Satcher coined a phrase about 22 years ago, said there is no health without mental health.
That's right. That's right.
And Dr. David Satcher from Atlanta, if you will, and at the where's the center there? But he was the Surgeon General when he coined the phrase, and then he went to work at the Carter Center.
Yeah. Mr. Dan, if I could use this reference point to one of my favorite shows is Frasier. Frasier had a show about good mental health. I have binge watched some of I love it, but he introduced it years ago when it wasn't really talked about or sort of, because it's always been a little taboo to say you're not mentally feeling well or you're not stable. It scared people like as if something was wrong with you. No, it's not. It's just, it could be temporary.
And the thing about it is we will talk about heart disease. We will talk about high blood pressure. We will talk about we'll talk about diabetes. And we'll talk about what our health journey is on our, I have to take this medicine. I have to do this. I have to do that. So we'll even talk about our health journey with our diabetes. We'll talk about that with our high blood pressure, but we won't talk about what's happening above the shoulders. We got to reduce the stigma, and we've got to make it okay to have the conversation. So
absolutely, Gigi.
That's one of the reasons why I think you're the most powerful individual in America around improving outcomes for those impacted by mental illness, because of the important role you play and your voice and how passionate you are about this work. We always are looking for a leader who will be listened to. And my role as an advocate, I know that sometimes when I start talking locally, it's wonk, 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 because they know I'm going to say the same thing, which is about improving outcomes. So this national platform where people don't know just how much I've transitioned from advocate to activist, I get the opportunity to champion and have other individuals. So you and your role and being selected as one of the top 50 influential individuals in this country was no mistake by the body that announced you as that, because mental illness, now we're saying, and after COVID, the numbers have just increased so much. So the opportunity to have platforms where we can talk about it, as Glenda has with her loss and her being in a fragile space mentally because of it, affords us a great opportunity. And so I just wanted to, when they asked me who I'd like to have as a guest, I said, definitely you, because of the influence you carry, but also the messaging. And so we did have a couple of questions for you, because you actually came from a place where you were influential, but landing at NAMI National as the CEO is really important. And it's huge. And you've made already, I've been with NAMI, a member of the affiliates in Alameda County before CEO in Contra Costa County. And I have seen in the time, and it's a relatively short time you've been here, all the improvements. So how did you get into this work? Why was it so important to you?
Gigi, thank you. And I'm gonna, start off my comments by, first of all, thank you for the compliments. But with that, you know how I care about this work, and I care about representing you and every one of our leaders that do this work, because you set the tone, you set the temperament, and then you execute. So it's about leadership, tone, and execution, and you do that at such a high level. In terms of how I got into this work, I previously, I worked in the private sector for over 32 years. And then I started looking at how could I give back. And I worked at the National Association of Counties. Then I worked as the executive director for the American Psychiatric Foundation. And then the opportunity presented itself for me to actually work or paint on a larger canvas. And that canvas being NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. What brought me to this work and why it's so important to me is that my contemporary, who I grew up with, we were the oldest in our family, and we were to be the first to go to college, and we were to be the role models for our younger siblings. She lost her life to suicide in 1986. And so in addition to that loss, the loss of the family, the ripple effect to the family was tremendous. And we here it is, 2024. That was in 1986, and we as a family have really not talked about it. So that's the reason I came to this work, because of what it did and what happened. In addition to losing my contemporary, my first cousin, we were born the same year, grew up together. I lost my uncle, her father, to substance abuse. The pain of losing his daughter was so great that he just succumbed to substance abuse, and he was a 6'4", 250 pound semi-pro football player. And when he passed away, he weighed about 130 pounds. So the pain that I've seen the family I want to change that narrative for any other family. And there's other examples in my background in terms of mental illness. So, but that's what brought me to NAMI, and that's why I'm doing this work. I want to change the outcome. I want to change the outcome for that parent that I saw on the elevator that said, I wish I'd known about NAMI sooner. Well, what we would like as a collective is to make sure everybody, every community knows about NAMI.
Yes.
And every sector. You know, when we say every sector, we're talking about the private sector. We're talking about all of the industry sectors. You know, what is this thing called NAMI? Well, who is NAMI? What do they do? How do they do it? NAMI is an organization that was started by mothers in 1979. We're 45 years young. So what can we do? And what does it look like in us being inclusive? We have 5 values and fairness, compassion, empowerment, inclusion. And the most important one is hope. And you know, and the way it's in our printed materials, we have hope first. I always say hope last, because hope is the most important one. Because if you have someone who is hopeless, they're feeling helpless.
Yes.
We want them to feel hopeful.
That's right.
So but that's what brought me into the work is the pain of losing and what we experienced as a family of losing our loved one.
And that's so often the story whenever we even recruit volunteers. It's like they don't want anyone to have to experience something that they went through. But they also share with us they were made aware of NAMI before they were the county or the governmental programs that are in place to support them. So we really are a bridge to healing. And one of the wonderful things about NAMI that I connected with was I recognized that I couldn't do it without my faith. So NAMI is not just one of the longest grassroots organizations. We have faith net programs because we're being realistic about how individuals heal. And so another question, because this is the Americans Heroes group, is NAMI does quite a bit for veterans. Can you share what we do for veterans at the national level, and then that it penetrates down to each of our over 600 affiliates? Dan?
Yeah, thank you very much, Gigi. And from the faith standpoint, I just came back from actually speaking at a faith-based conference, actually 2 of them, Pathways to Hope. And then I went to, that was in San Antonio. And then I went to Atlanta to a mega church and about 1,500 people there. So, and it was their conference about mental health. Both of those. So now let me come to the veterans. First of all, I come from a military family with my grandfather's brother actually was in World War II. My dad served in at the time of Korea. He didn't serve in battle, but he served in Korea. He's 11th Airborne. My brother's 82nd Airborne. My first and his wife is a major, a retired major. And and then I
thank you to your whole entire family. Yes, bravo.
Yes, sir. I have 2 first cousins that are on the wall, on the veterans wall. One was a Marine and one was Army. So when we talk about veterans, it is my family. And I just wanted to say that. And you also talk about military people. When we talk about servant leadership, you can't think about a person that selects to go into the military. That's servant leadership. So let me talk about what we do. One of the first things I want to share is that we have a Service Members and Veterans Family Council. So we have a council. They have a seat at the table as we're talking about our body of work for veterans. So that's one of the things. Nothing about us. We say nothing about us without us. So who's the us? So we want to make sure that we are inclusive of veterans. The other thing is that we have a program that we've created called NAMI Homefront. And let me just play with that for a second.
Yeah.
What does the home front look like when a military person is deployed? What happens on that home front when that military person gets their paper saying you get yourself prepared, you're getting ready to deploy? Well, there's a lot of things that happen on the home front. Now, what happens on the home front when that military person comes back?
Oh, wow, Mr. Dan, you hit it on all cylinders.
What do you look for in terms of their behavior? Has their behavior changed? Do they isolate themselves? Do they seem to be mad all the time? What does the family look for in their loved one? And then what are the things that the family needs to prepare for from the standpoint of their concerns with their loved one when they deploy? And we have a number of assets, and you go to NAMI.org/veterans, and we have all kinds of assets there for veterans, and we're very intentional with that. And the other thing is, I'll share with you that, you know, we want to make sure we walk the talk. So on our board, we want to make sure our board is representative of every discipline. We have a United States Army retired West Point graduate who is a psychiatrist, African-American woman that went to West Point, served in the United States Army. And more important than that is she's an incredible board member and a mother, and shares her experiences with us. And she's on our board right now. So that's another thing that we do. And then we have so many different kinds of things that we try to provide. I'll stop there. I'll just stop there because I know you have a set of questions.
Yeah, we have wonderful opportunities to embrace all and recognizing our challenge around the unsheltered. We recognize a lot are veterans. And so we've also had many of our affiliates, you know, we follow the lead from NAMI National with our home front programs. And then in NAMI Contra Costa, we've also hired people reflective, because the one thing I learned from veterans, they want to hear from someone who's been through the same lived experience as them.
Absolutely.
So we have Dr. Phil, who's been on this show with me that you guys interviewed. So I just wanted to put the plug in for NAMI Contra Costa, always taking the lead from leadership and then positioning ourselves. But we are in a, you know, we're all got our mind on the politics right now. And so I have never had so many elected officials stop by our office before for a photo op. But because we're a 501c3, we recognize that we cannot endorse candidates, but we can encourage voting towards those who would support mental health. So I love the campaign that NAMI National put out, Vote Mental Health. And so can you share a little about how you're leveraging, Dan, this opportunity, this unique time, but walking the fine line we must all walk because of our status as a nonprofit organization?
We have our campaign, Vote for Mental Health. So inside of voting, there is the opportunity to really have all of the citizens really focus on voting for mental health. What does that look like? What is the legislation that they can really vote on? And then whatever side of the ticket that you're on, as the elections occur, you hold those elected officials accountable to what are you doing about mental health? So we're trying to keep it front and center and top of mind. Mental health. Anyone that's running for office on their platform, they should have Vote for Mental Health. And we have a link, voteformentalhealth.org. And you can go to that link and it actually is actionable. We give you actionable information there of, okay, what does this mean? What to do? We give you a call to action. And it's vote, VOTE, the number 4, mentalhealth.org.
If I may jump in now, we started America's Heroes Group, Mr. Dan, in our first show that aired, April 2016. The co-founder, Clifford P. Kelly, is a Vietnam veteran. So he and I both together saw there was a void of veterans having a voice, not someone talking at them, not someone talking bullet points, but having a voice regarding their voice, their concerns, their issues. So Vote Mental Health is so on target, because what that does, Mr. Dan, it removes the rhetoric. It removes the rhetoric, because you need to talk to me and not at me. You need to listen to me and not patronize me. You need to know that I matter. So that's what America's Heroes Group does, Mr. Dan. It brings those voices that we honor, that we celebrate, that we let be heard, without the rhetoric being stacked on top of it. And so Gigi is on point. Veterans, when it comes to veterans, they want to talk to veterans that understand who served. They understand their own population. And yes, they do not patronize their brotherhood.
So I'm smiling because as I've talked about my family, you didn't hear
Yes,
me
sir.
say that I served. My brother and my dad were both paratroopers. So you know what that looks like when the three of us get together. When the three of us get together, and I'm the oldest, I'm on the outside of that conversation because my dad, as a paratrooper, wants to talk to someone that looks like him, that lived that experience. And my brother lived that experience. So the two of them, they're symbiotic when they talk. Now, let me say this about them. You can look over my shoulder and you see a book called "You Are Not Alone." You can barely see it. What this is, it's a book that we wrote, "You Are Not Alone: The NAMI Guide to Navigating Mental Health," with advice.
Wow.
We have 130 first-person stories in here, directly from a person with lived experience, talking about their experience. I gave a copy of this book to my dad is still with us. He's 91 years old.
Praise God. Good.
My dad. And where I'm going with this is that a couple of things have occurred since I've been at NAMI. My dad read the book and he asked me, have you ever been depressed? He started talking about mental health. So that's one. My brother went to the Veterans Administration to get his assessment, and he's been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. I would offer to you, he may not have done that if it weren't for his big brother's work. So where I'm going with this is that nothing about us without us, and we want to make sure that our veterans know they're not alone. And my dad and my brother, they know they're not alone.
And I kind of expanded that. There's nothing about us without us, and those who can speak on our behalf when we're not able to. And the reason I said it's because that family voice is often missing. Sometimes people from, BIPOC communities, their voice is not loud enough. But I can say since Dan's been in the role, it's so inclusive. NAMI affiliates have really done the work, starting at a national level with relationships with Kohl's and Macy's, to really expand the work to embrace individuals who may not have had as much of a voice or a seat at the table, and you just feel it all over.
We've written a second book. We've written a second book. It would be remiss if I didn't. Dr. Christine Crawford, our deputy medical director, wrote a book. And she is a child and adolescent psychiatrist out of Boston, and she actually teaches and practices. She sees patients. So she sees young people and she sees the parents. And here's the net. She wrote a book that we just launched this month. Last month. We just started last month, and it's for parents and caregivers.
Yes.
And by the way, let me mention this. Remember, the Surgeon General, just about 4 weeks prior to the launch of the book, he just sent out a new report that they had done on the parents, and said that 48% of parents in the United States are at a high level of anxiety.
Wow. Well, we have run out of time, but this has launched a bigger platform into where we can become a media partner with NEMA to make sure that we're tapping on all cylinders from GG to veterans to family. We can launch bigger and larger, making sure that we're captivating the scope of what all can be done. It has been a pleasure, Mr. Dan, and you have been worth the wait. Gigi and I've been trying to get together, scheduled so we could speak with you. So, sir, from the bottom of my heart to your family, thank you and your family for your service. Because what people don't understand is when family members serve, they serve too.
Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered into market, advertise, and sponsor your business with Vietnam veteran Cliff Kelly and America's Heroes Group, where information and resources are intentionally disseminated via radio, print, and social media. Call our office for more details at 312-803-2618.
I'm Ken Jennings. All of us here at Jeopardy want to thank you for your service to our nation. We truly honor and appreciate you, and what's more, we're looking for contestants like you to play on our show. So head to Jeopardy.com now and take the Anytime test, and we're looking forward to seeing you soon right here on the Alex Trebek stage.
Cliff Kelly and America's Heroes Group, where information and resources are intentionally disseminated via radio, print, and social media. Call our office for more details at 312-803-2618. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally.
Welcome back to America's Heroes Group, our digital media show. October is Breast Cancer, Mental Health Awareness, and Natural Disability and Domestic Violence Awareness Month. This show is for Wednesday, October 16th, 2024. And once again, with us, we have Stephanie Kalota. She's U.S. Army Reserve Sergeant First Class and founder and creator of the Veteran Legislative Voice. And she is a podcast and our HDG correspondent. The podcast, of course, is the Veterans Legislative Voice. We're going to talk about some updates and what's going on in Congress right now as bills are trying to be passed or not trying to be passed one way or the other. I'm going to get to the bottom of that. How you doing, Stephanie?
I'm doing all right. It's going to be quite interesting, but just for everybody's knowledge, actually, Congress is in recess. They scheduled a recess for most of this month and until the next general election. And that's supposed to help a lot, especially representatives that are trying to get reelected for next month. So it'll be quite interesting to see what they're going to be doing after the election and we get into our lame duck session.
No, I can always tell when it's election season because there's like all these for sale signs in the front yards of people's houses.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. Yes, and also you can start seeing flags again. Certain flags, not American ones, being shown at the back of trucks and other vehicles. That's another one you can also see every year, which is quite interesting every election time.
Mm-hmm. So these guys are basically on the campaign trails trying to get reelected. And then this is a very tight race going on right now, the presidential race. There's a lot we talked about in an earlier segment, how there's some bad news at the Trump campaign, but it's like, Trump just takes a licking and keeps on ticking because his base are just pre-wired to kind of, support him regardless. And what we talked about again is getting the right information out to people so people realize what they're getting into, which way you go, whether it's Harris or whether it's Trump. So people can make informed decisions. So you can't say, I didn't know. Mm-hmm. Can't bury your head in the sand all the time. So tell us, what are some of the things that are on the table that should be getting passed?
Okay, so first, though, let me just preface this is that not very many congressional bills have actually been passed. And so right now we're at 1,432. Now, based off of the previous congressional sessions, which are 2 years long, every 2 years there's one. Think about how long a representative runs for, basically are in office every 2 years. So that's usually how the congressional sessions are made. Typically, majority of these congressional bills average between 1,700 and around 2,100 every congressional session. We are dramatically lower than that, and trying to meet it and pass 300 bills after they come back from the next election timeframe, so early November, and then they have until early January, which really is the end of December, because not many people come back after Christmas if they're not reelected. So there's not a whole lot of time for them to really meet up and try to get to the actual average of what's going on. But this is actually pretty typical when it comes to a very polarized time frame for politics, because the last time that we had very polarized politics situation environment was when we had the Tea Party actually rise up through the conservative side. And that was in 2011, 2012 to 2013. That time frame was the height of the Tea Party. And we actually were down to this number, but down to the 1400s and passing after that, after the Tea Party was really elected and put in power. But after that, the numbers went back up again. And that's when the polarizing, calmed down. And so now that we're at the height of the polarizing again, our numbers are really low. So that's one of the issues that we have right now, is that when things are really polarized in politics, we don't get a whole lot of things passed that we need. And so it can be really frustrating that, we try to fight for more partisanship when actually that hurts us instead of really helps us. So I wanted to preface this when we get to here, because there's only really a few congressional bills for military and veterans that have actually passed within the last year is what I'm really trying to focus on. There's a few bills that have passed both chambers, but have not yet been signed by the president, but it hasn't been sent to the president. So it's not President Biden's fault. I will preface that as well. One of them is the Veterans Compensation Cost of Living Adjustment Act of 2024. What this is, it actually helps increase the rates of the compensation for veterans, those with service-connected disabilities, and rates of dependency and other types of compensation. So, every year, often our VA disability and the other benefits do get a little bit of a bump, for inflation, cost of living expenses, those type of things. This is passed in both the House and the Senate, and it was actually majority vote. It was actually pretty simple. Right now, it's just being held in the Senate, and it's probably because they're still in recess. And so after the general election, they'll have it sent over to President Biden so he can sign.
So the thing I'm kind of concerned about is that, with the difficulty of passing bills and over the last few years, and with the growing number of problems we have, there's some issues with our economy. We have to admit that. And then also a lot of things that need to be done within our military, as we are going through an era where you have two major wars going on around the world that could have broader implications and maybe even ensnare this country. So if people aren't able to get to the point where they can actually talk about things, compromise, and try to solve an issue, as opposed to just digging in seemingly for a power play that probably will never occur anyway. At the end of the day, what's the prospect or the prognosis for being able to, for any presidential candidate to actually get anything done, whoever wins the White House?
Bipartisanship, honestly, especially with how the numbers are in both the House and the Senate. A lot of the times right now, both parties are trying to do all or nothing. So they try to get all of their party on the same page to vote for a specific bill so that it could pass. The problem is that some of these congressional bills need 60% of each, the Senate specifically, a lot of the times needs 60% to get there. Well, no party has 60% control of the Senate. So you still need to have a bit of bipartisanship. You also have different varying degrees of politicians, from the far alt-right to more of the progressive Republicans. And those, for example, I'm using them as an example because of how we had the issues with just trying to elect a speaker in this congressional session, which took a while because they couldn't agree on the same thing. And when you do that, you can lose a lot of power. But by using bipartisanship and trying to get more of the other party, especially more of the more moderate Democrats, for example, may vote for more things that are Republican, and vice versa. More of the, more progressive Republicans could vote for more Democrat things because of where those different things lie. And so with more bipartisanship, you could really be more successful in getting more things done. One of the problems especially during the Tea Party time frame, was that a lot of the elected officials that did use bipartisanship to get things passed, which have done really great things, especially for veterans and military, they did bipartisan bills to try to get things passed and succeed and improve people's lives. But then they got knocked for it. And then they lost their office, and it went to somebody else. And that's when we can't get anything done, is if they can't agree on
with the enemy. The enemy is infiltrating your brain. You can't work with them, talk to them.
Right. It's ridiculous. It's really frustrating when you treat the other party as the enemy, because you can't get anything done that way, especially because then that actually narrows your margin of how many people that could actually vote for the bill that you're trying to pass. It can get really upsetting and really frustrating. So that's one of the things that I really just try to harp on is bipartisanship, because you can really get that going. I applaud Marco Rubio. He did a lot of bipartisanship things, especially for the PACT Act that I mentioned so much. But he did stick to his guns and made sure that veterans got what they needed. And he stayed with the original agreements and fought for it all the way to the end until it passed. So that type of bipartisanship can really succeed for everyone, not just the select few, and being able to say, I was able to stick to my guns and, fight against the evil opposite party.
Right. It's sad because cooperation will always get you more than competition. That's just the reality of life. And then when you look at, even when I look at Kamala Harris's economic plan, I look at Trump's economic plan, there's actually very good points in both of those things, but neither of them are perfect. I don't like Trump's plan because he has a nuclear bomb inside of his plan that'll just tank the economy. A lot of his stuff is very, very good, especially for small businesses. But he has the idea of paying for the economy through tariffs, that's never worked. It never will work. It's not a good idea. It's just a bad idea. But a lot of the things he wants to do, actually, I think are very good as far as tax cuts especially for small business owners. Kamala Harris has some great things in her economic plan, talking about things like helping single mothers and helping people with children with child tax credits and things along those lines, and also giving people funding to help them to raise their children. I think that's very, very good, and that's going to have long-term positive impacts in the economy. It's just a shame that both parties can't come together and actually figure out how they can kind of meld the two together and take out the bad stuff in each one of them and create and craft a better plan between the both of them, because they both have good ideas, but there are some little small flaws that could be shaved off. The two good ideas together, you got a super solid economic plan. Right.
But the thing is that these economic plans are not set in stone. They can change them. They can get what's best, because especially if the House stays with the Republicans' control, you're going to have to make some edits to the economic plan. Obama had actually, was it 3/4 of his terms, of his 2 terms combined, was all Republican controlled. And he had to compromise on a lot of things to be able to get things passed. There was good things that passed during his time frame, and there was things that didn't. But then that's because it was also in the opposite party's control. So, but there was compromises there that really helped a ton of people out. So there was things that still can be done. If Trump gets elected, he could technically decide not to do the tariffs because it could not get passed by the Senate. So that's the things that we have to really have to strive for and really watch out for. Because I do believe that the Senate would stay with the Democrats, but that's, my estimation. It could change because polls have not shown the true numbers before. But he's still going to have to compromise one way or another. So we'll just have to see what happens. But if we can get back to the bills, there's one that really does look great. It's Restoring the Benefits to Defrauded Veterans Act. And that one has passed the House and the Senate. And it's being held in the Senate, just like the other one. And one of the great things about this one is that a lot of times veterans do fall to people defrauding them. So, but the thing is that this is specifically towards people that have been deemed unable to manage their benefits, and then they receive from the VA someone that's assigned to administer their benefits on their behalf, and they're like a fiduciary responsibility for these benefits. Well, the thing is that sometimes these fiduciaries can misuse some or all of the benefits. And if this is found, the VA must reissue the misused portion to the intended beneficiary or the successor of the fiduciary. So that way the veteran or their dependents can still receive the benefits that they need. And so this one would be really important for those people that fall into those issues. So that one I'm really looking forward to getting passed, and that way we can help out more veterans and their families.
What do you think is going to happen next year after November? And then the dust kind of settles. What bills do you think are going to go first? Or what bills should go first?
Oh, you mean next year, or you mean after at the beginning of the next session, or
Yes.
after the election? Oh,
After the election, and after the next session.
okay. It's honestly, it's probably going to be one of the first things that they're going to start attacking is the funding, because we still haven't passed an NDA. We have a continued resolution. So that's one of the things that's actually on my list, because they've only passed one chamber. And some of these bills have good and bad things to them. Some of these bills have really good things attached in one of them, but not the other. So it's one of those things that we just have to really watch. And that one would be one of the bigger ones. For example, there's one, Daniel Harvey and Adam Lambert improving the service member transition to reduce veteran suicide act. Apologize, that was long. This bill has been submitted a couple of times in the past congressional sessions and have not been able to make it to the finish line. This one has passed the House on its own and received in the Senate, but it hasn't moved in several months. But it's attached to the one of the NDAs that's been stalled. I wish they can attach it to the other one to make sure that, we don't it's that way you can put all the eggs in each of the baskets that could possibly pass. And what this one, basically under the current law, the VA helps transitioning service members who receive health care and other benefits from the department and works with the DOD and other federal agencies to offer resources to service members and their families as they transition to civilian life. But this will actually this law would actually create a pilot program on activities under the pre-separation transition process. So we actually get them a little bit sooner than, you ETS'd, you left. Now I got to figure out where I go next for my stuff.
Right.
So this one starts them before then. So it's more of what my old boss used to say, a warm handoff. Warm handover. You actually get to take the person and say, okay, before you leave, this is somebody that you need to get to know, pre-separation time frame, and then they hopefully will stay the same point of contact throughout your transition. And then that way it's a lot smoother process. So that's what I'm hoping, that we can get that get that passed. And so then it would really help out a lot more service members, because when you leave the military, it is one of the most traumatic things about your life. A lot of people get diagnosed with adjustment disorder when you go through this process, because you go from one lifestyle and then you just get dropped, and you got to figure out a whole new lifestyle, whole new routine, everything. And it can cause a lot of different issues within your life, with your mental health, with your physical health. And having that warm handoff could really help out a lot of service members while they go through that transition.
Oh yeah, I definitely can see that. I think that's a really, really good thing to do. But then also the thing of it is that can also help identify some of the issues that person might have through the military service and traumas they might have experienced. Having someone that they can talk to and trust, and having a confidant, a mentor, because it is a major life change going into the military and coming out of the military. And coming out of the military, oftentimes, usually is way more difficult than going into the military.
Yeah.
They'll
Yeah.
take you, but getting out is a whole nother, it's like being a fish out of water for a lot of veterans. So now, what else do you think is really important that needs to get passed? What do you think it should be? If you had to pick one bill that should be pushed to the top of the list, what else would you say would be number 2?
Okay, so this one is an interesting one. It doesn't seem very big. It doesn't seem very like huge, life-changing, but it can solve a whole lot of rage that veterans may experience. And it's called the Stuck on Hold Act.
The what? Stuck on hold?
Yes.
What?
I love the title of it. Okay. So what this does, it directs the Secretary of Veterans Affairs and the Commissioner of Social Security to implement an automated systems of callback functionality for each customer service phone line of the Department of Veterans Affairs and Social Security Administration, respectively, and other purposes. So what this really does is that when you call the VA, sometimes you get stuck on hold. I think the longest I've had, and this is more of a Montgomery GI Bill one, I think I had waited 2 hours and 20 minutes.
Wow.
On hold. But this was at the height of the
Social Security.
Yes. Well, this is the height of like a lot of the issues. But Social Security, there's a lot of veterans. Actually, there's a larger amount of veterans on Social Security than regular civilians.
Wow.
Yes. Not many people know that, but yes, there's a higher amount of veterans on that because of the disabilities we have, because we're more likely to be injured, more likely to have more issues. So that also heads off and tries to help more veterans. There was many news articles that came out years ago about how long people wait on hold with the VA. There's another issue of they getting dropped off. An issue I'm having in this region is that I call, rings 3 times, says there's no one here to answer the phone, and just hangs up. No voicemail, no like option to go somewhere else. I have to drive in to get a hold of somebody and so that I can physically talk to them because they're not answering the phone. And this will actually solve that issue. And so I'm like, it could solve a lot of rage and a lot of problems, and honestly, a lot of distrust that veterans may have with the VA, because those with mental health issues, if you try to get yourself help and then you run into this issue, that may be outside the immediate VA's fault because something might be happening. This can give them a little bit more of a cushion, because if they run into this issue, they might not go back to the VA again.
Right.
Based off this. So this could help more people with mental health, with suicide, physical health, a lot of issues. But what this would do with that, it would inform the caller to the line that they call, the anticipated wait time, instead of just giving you the ringtone and everything, and you just wait there for God knows how long. And it's supposed to automatically offer a callback for any caller with the anticipated wait time more than 10 minutes. That one would be amazing for a lot of people.
Definitely. So
Yes.
what bills you think do you not want to see passed? What bills do you think are kind of, maybe aren't needed or have too many flaws?
Love that you said that, because that was the next one on my list. It's the Montgomery GI Bill Selected Reserve Tuition Fairness Act. Sounds great. Awesome things. What it does is it actually directs the VA to disapprove courses of education offered by public administrations that do not charge the in-state tuition rate to a veteran that are using the educational assistance under Title X.
Rewind that a little bit.
Yeah.
What was that? Rewind it one more time. I got to hear that one more time.
It directs the VA to disapprove courses of education offered by a public institution that do not charge the veteran the in-state tuition rate.
Okay.
So right now, for a lot of the Montgomery GI Bill, they're supposed to charge you the in-state tuition rate.
Okay.
Some colleges don't. I don't know the legality there. I'm not an expert with education. I've gone through this. I've gone through and used the education benefits before, but never ran into this issue before. So not sure how this one would go, but this one can cause a lot of frustration and issues because a student could be started, assume that they're going to get their benefits, don't realize all of the in and out and all the bureaucracy and all the red tape involved. And it can cause a lot of frustrations and issues here. And if the veteran goes so far, they might have to be the one to pay for the tuition.
Yeah.
Because they're not told in time. And they probably already started their classes.
And I already see it the way you said it the first time. When you read it the first time, it sounded like that they want you to go to an in-state school. That's what it sounded like.
No, when you go to an out-of-state school, like an online college, places like Southern New Hampshire, American Military University, American Public University is the mother of that one, the higher college for American Military University. They charge the in-state tuition rate because, Southern New Hampshire is in New Hampshire, and American Military University, I believe, is in West Virginia. Don't quote me on that. And they don't charge the veterans out-of-state tuition because they're doing it online. They can, do it from wherever they live, and that portion would be covered. And when you go to an actual residential class out of state and use the veterans benefits, you should be charged in-state fees, the in-state tuition. Some veterans are not. And I do not know the percentage of how many veterans would be impacted on what goes on. This one I'm still researching and trying to find information on. It's a little scarce. It's a little bit of a sleeper. And the person that sponsored the bill doesn't provide a whole lot of information.
Wow.
So for me, it can cause a lot of issues. To me, this sounds like it can protect the veteran from not having to pay and get charged more, or even not charge the VA so much because they have to do the in-state fees. But I can see this bill not very well written because it needs more information for enforcement, when they need to disprove it, when they need to go through the process and do these things, because I can see a lot of veterans get impacted and might have to get student loans to pay for these issues, for this tuition, if they're told too late. It can cause way too much problems because I don't think this bill is written very well to protect the veterans.
I think I understand the concept or the idea of, the government doesn't want to pay more than what they owe. I get that. But the reality is that when I had similar experience when I was in college and in the National Guard, they only pay for, if you go to a state school, which I went to a private school anyway, but when you were in a state school, they only pay for the state school that you are in. So you can't go to a state school, even across the border. You have to go to they only pay for the school for the state that you are in. And it's where you serve in. Or you serve in.
That's a guard thing. The reserve, you can go across, like I live in Jacksonville, Florida. I can technically try to go to a college in Georgia. It'll be a little bit of a drive. But there's other cities that are right on that line, like Cincinnati is.
Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Market, advertise, and sponsor your business with Vietnam veteran Cliff Kelly and America's Heroes Group, where information and resources are intentionally disseminated via radio, print, and social media. Call our office for more details at 312-803-2618.
I'm Ken Jennings. All of us here at Jeopardy want to thank you for your service to our nation. We truly honor and appreciate you, and what's more, we're looking for contestants like you to play on our show. So head to Jeopardy.com now and take the Anytime test, and we're looking forward to seeing you soon right here on the Alex Trebek stage.
Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally.
Welcome to America's Heroes Group. I'm Sean Claiborne, your host. October is Breast Cancer, Mental Health, and National Disability and Domestic Violence Awareness Month. This is a show recorded for Wednesday, October 16, 2024. And today we have with us a very distinguished guest. You've heard him on our show before, and he's back with us today to give us some good information about some history and also some things we need to think and consider very, very strongly. And that is Mr. Richard Berkshire. He's the CEO of the Black Veterans Project, and that is an advocacy group and also a very important group that gives us information about history and also about our country. He's also a U.S. Army Afghanistan Infantry combat medic and co-founder of the organization. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me, as always.
It's my pleasure. So again, tell us a little bit about the Black History Project, or Black Veteran Project, I should say. So the Black Veteran Project has certain goals. What is the goal of the Black Veteran Project?
So the goal of the Black Veteran, first, thanks for having me. Two, the goal of the Black Veterans Project at its core, we've been around for about 6 years, is to frame up a reparative justice effort, looking at the legacy of benefit obstruction that Black vets have faced historically, all the way dating back to the inception of the GI Bill, and trying to connect the historical legacy, but also start to do some actual real tangible things. So we've mostly been framing up legal pathways, so looking at how we can use litigation and help to ferment research that can help to support litigation efforts for Black vets that are seeking reparative justice. And then also doing some legislative advocacy, contending with the different facets of benefit obstruction. Mostly been focused on VA home loans with respect to our legislative advocacy, but that's essentially the project's mandate.
Now, how did you start? How did you co-found it?
So I founded it shortly after I'd gotten out the military, had a really difficult transition. I think on paper, it seemed as though, I'd done pretty well for myself. I graduated from an Ivy League school, studying public policy, got a great job in New York. But there was a bit of a mental decline. It was also at a time when Trump had just got elected. We were talking about 2016 and about. And so, I deteriorated. I just had a really difficult transition point. And I tried to seek out mental health care through the VA and was consistently kind of turned away and mismanaged. And unfortunately, that led to a suicide attempt. And it was when I survived that suicide attempt, I ended up being in a psych ward, and I read a book called When Affirmative Action Was White. And it looked at the construction of social welfare policies really following World War II under the New Deal and the GI Bill that helped to bolster and build out the white middle class, but that largely locked out Black folk. And I found particularly interesting the history in and around the GI Bill. And then I'd also have been doing a bit of research looking at racial inequities that were kind of persisting in the present day. I was living in New York City, and it just struck me that when I would go to events for unemployed veterans, for instance, the vast majority of the room would be Black. And so I knew that there were issues that were still persisting, but I didn't have a good sense of what the VA was doing about that, about those inequities, but also kind of how my generation could plug into kind of the intergenerational struggle. And so we really started as a storytelling project and kind of a research project. And our first major partnership was with Yale Law School, who we still work very closely with. They have a veterans legal clinic that does some really robust litigation work. And so we ended up partnering together on a FOIA effort that looked at disparities in disability compensation over the last 20 years. So from about 2001 to about 2020, 2021. And we were able to show that there were, in fact, significant and sustained racial disparities with respect to disability compensation, and one explicitly around PTSD. And so that, confirmed what Black vets had long known. I don't think that this is any news to Black vets, but what made it special was that we actually had internal VA data for the first time in history proving what they had long suspected. And so now we can actually do something with it, not only on the advocacy side, but through litigation. And so that data is undergirding a landmark case called Monk versus United States, which has been making its way through the courts for about 2 years now. Back in March or late March, early April, it became one of the first reparations or reparative justice cases in the nation's history to survive a motion to dismiss, meaning that it's going to hopefully be heard on its merits in court. In part, I think the most convincing evidence for the court was that we had all this internal VA data specifically around disability compensation. So we kind of found the smoking gun in some instance. But like you said, we know that this history has been going on for a long time, stripping tens of billions of dollars out of the support apparatus that should be there to help to undergird anyone who serves, right? Or those who serve honorably. And dating all the way back to the GI Bill, whether it be through housing loans, through disability compensation, through equitable access to a host of other programs. Black vets have been marginalized, and our group has been trying to see how we can force the VA to make some kind of recompense for it that goes beyond just saying that we're going to try to institute some kind of factors that make racial equity more real in the future without contending with the harm that's already been done.
Wouldn't it also bring some history and recognition to the experience of not just Blacks, but Native Americans, Jews in the military, Latinos in the military, taking us all the way back to Crispus Attucks, who was the first person to die during the American Revolution. And we've always had a history of being at forefront and being and having military service. The Harlem Hellfighters during World War I, that was the Army National Guard unit in your neck of the woods in New York. They were one of the most decorated units, 170 decorations, and particularly there was a member who historians know about very well, a Private Henry Johnson, who single-handedly fended off 30 Germans with a bolo knife. And even though he got wounded, he was never even awarded the Purple Heart. To give people context, people get the Purple Heart for getting shot in the butt, for falling on the knife, or for doing all kinds of different things. He fended off 30 attacking enemy combatants, was wounded 21 times, never got disability, and never even got a Purple Heart. Now the French, where it was who witnesses his heroism and bravery, awarded him with the Croix de Guerre and with a star and a bronze palm. Now the bronze palm is important because that bronze palm is the highest, makes that award the highest level of that award that you can receive, and it's like the second highest award that you can receive in the French military. But he was awarded an American. He was actually the first American to be awarded that award. But what nation awards a foreign co-combatant a medal like that? He didn't even get a Purple Heart, not even what he deserved, until he got after he died. Eventually, it took him years to get it, for him to actually be posthumously awarded this award, the Medal of Honor, which he truly deserved. So those types of histories, when I think about that, it kind of lays a groundwork and a foundation that they try to understand, even though the military was one of the first federal institutions and really first institutions in the United States to really integrate because of necessity. So if you're fighting war, you need everything you got, right? You need every resource you can possibly, every stone needs to be unturned in order to it has to be turned over in order to find all the resources you can get, right? How does that lean into and to give people some perspective of what are the types of injustices that minorities faced from military benefits, receiving your benefits, and instant recognition.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's multi-layered. I mean, I think in part of, again, our work has been to try to tie the historical thread to the present day. I think, when our country talks about the issue of reparations or restorative justice, a lot of folks go directly to slavery. And I, deeply believe, and I think there are a lot of others that deeply believe that Jim Crow era policies are where the conversation should really begin. And that's the most fertile ground for a reparative mandate at the national level. And so, to even talk about, I think even more present days, disparities that I think are part and parcel to the legacy of how race has played out. Black service members even today are over twice as likely, depending on their branch of service, to get out with a dishonorable discharge. And some folks, they have a host of different reasons why that is. But it's still, I think, quite alarming. And when you have a dearth of Black folks serving in the officer rank or in the special forces or in, all the different opportunities that the military can bring, and Black folk are still finding it very difficult to traverse that landscape. And I don't often find that there are organizations willing to contend with that and have a more serious conversation. And so in our small way, we're a grassroots organization. So we punch above our weight class, but we try to insert that conversation into the ecosystem to ensure that race is being talked about in a constructive way. But then you also have, I came on to talk about an event that we're having on the 25th of October, our first equity reception here in DC, where we put together a pretty distinguished panel of folks who'll be, talking through a lot of this history. One of the folks will also be from the Maryland ACLU. They've been doing a bit of work around what's been happening relative to affirmative action at the military academies and the ways in which that, these programs that were instituted mostly in the 1970s and 80s that allowed for, for us to get to a point where we have the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the Secretary of Defense be Black men, in part because they were beneficiaries of these programs. And now there's a concerted effort to deconstruct these programs within the military, let alone everything that happened, this misnomers in the last 2 years around critical race theory and the way that they were attacking the way history was being taught around race at the academies or at military institutions. You have a racial climate survey that's done every 2 years by the DOD, and it never sees the light of day. And we don't talk about these things. We act like it's normal. There's a sustained disparity in government contracting where Black folks and Black businesses receive less than 1% of DOD contracts, and the ways in which that translates to massive wealth disparities on the other side is not discussed. And that's not, that people don't draw the correlations as much. And I think that, obviously our project is focused explicitly on VA benefits. So everything from VA home loans to disability compensation has kind of been our sweet spot, and trying to figure out where we can do some valuable work in partnership with attorneys and with researchers to move conversations forward about remedy. Ultimately, we can't have a holistic conversation without also touching on these other prongs that over the course of many decades have siphoned quite literally hundreds of billions of dollars out of our community.
It's interesting because when I think about our history of the military, and also how just looking at the foundation, the fact that Blacks in the military and minorities in general didn't even get the recognition they deserved during wartime. And then now you fast forward to our day and time, and you see a lot of the disparities when it comes to even benefits, the benefits that these people never had a chance to enjoy. Being denied access to the GI Bill, being denied access to the VA home loan guarantees, things like that, which had a huge impact on how wealth is transferred and how people can actually build a better life for themselves, for their families, and for their future, and transfer wealth. How is your strategy? How do you see your strategy as just attacking individuals? It seems like you're taking on individual cases. What efforts are being done to try to look at changing the actual policy itself, the policies themselves, to make it, to kind of deconstruct these inequities?
I don't think we've gotten there just yet. I mean, I think that our FOIA efforts forced the VA to have to be honest about the disparities that existed and forced their hand around releasing reports that they had long buried for many years. And I think that was a win within itself as a starting point. The VA put together an equity task force. So this administration has been somewhat supportive of the efforts to address racial inequities. but it's not very clear what policies they're putting in place when they're still trying to get the Monk case thrown out of court. There's still not full transparency around kind of state-based or even like by hospitals or by regions of the VA where this might be most concentrated and denials might be most concentrated. Like, we know that the VA has been tracking these issues in some way, but it's been very slow to task to try to get them to be fully transparent about the data that they do have, and then start to figure out how we take action steps to ensure that, one, bad actors are addressed, because it seems as though the VA has known who the bad actors are for some time, but have been in some respects protecting them. But then two, I think it's also a conversation about the way in which the VA funnels resources toward organizations that serve minority groups, right? I think that there are many VSOs that have been carrying the brunt of these disparities and servicing in community and providing direct service to Black vets that have been falling through the cracks for many, many decades. I can name quite a few organizations that have been doing that, but they are severely under-resourced, right? And oftentimes pale in comparison to the kind of support that, even outside of the government, the kind of corporate support rather, that like an organization like the Wounded Warrior Project might receive. But these organizations often have very wide racial blind spots. And I don't think that's, I think that's an uncomfortable truth that we need to speak out loud. The ways in which, organizations like the American Legion or the VFW or these kind of main pillars in the VSO space had largely neglected their responsibility to also focus on the ways in which race has shaped America, and race was shaping the ways in which veterans benefits were being distributed. And so it's a broader conversation. I don't think that there's just like one kind of blanket solution that the VA can necessarily institute. It's about how the ecosystem works in tandem to ensure that benefits are distributed in an equitable way.
So what do you see at the future? What's your next step as far as trying to advance your mission and your goals to try to tackle this problem?
Yeah, so I mean, building out a reparative justice project takes a long time. So we actually took a real step back in the last year to think about strategy. We ended up moving through a really robust strategic planning process, have instituted some new really exciting partnerships, some of which we'll be naming out loud at the equity reception. So I'm not going to give them away now, but we're continuing to build out and bolster our kind of research partnerships, thinking through how do we really approach the legislative repair. So, about 4 years ago, there was that initial introduction of a bill called the GI Bill Restoration Act, which would seek to give descendants of Black World War II veterans access to VA home loans and potentially education benefits. And that bill stalled and didn't go anywhere. There was this kind of iterative bill that looked at the legacy of VA home loan denials explicitly, called the VA Housing Loan Forever Act, of which I testified in front of Congress twice about, but it was draft legislation that was never formally introduced. And so there's this need really to actually draft some piece of coherent legislation with a strategy and a funding model attached to it that we can actually see through. And so that's going to be one of our bigger kind of plans of attack in the coming administration. I think second to that, our main focus is on litigation. The Monk case, and it's a landmark case, so I should emphasize the importance of the Monk case. The Monk case is as important to the Black veteran community as Brown v. Board is and should be to anybody who cares about Black folk and education. That's how consequential the Monk case is, in part because it will determine in court whether the VA can ever be held accountable for historical racial discrimination against Black veterans. So it's not, when I say the importance of Black vets, but any vet who cares about racial equity, to really pay attention to this case and to support it as it moves forward, I think I can't understate that. And it's also going to be an opportunity for us to extrapolate from the VA a lot of the things that they've been hiding over the decades, hopefully in court in some way. So Yale is leading that work, and I'm really excited. Next week, I'll be able to be on the law school's campus, talking to some of the students that are working on this, and continuing to build solidarity. But then also, with respect to solidarity, the reparations ecosystem is vast. And so we do a lot of work trying to build solidarity amongst other kinds of movements around reparative justice. But our eyes on litigation, we definitely think that litigation, there are other kinds of lawsuits that we're seeking to take part in supporting. And so some of the new partnerships that we have will be in and around standing those up. and continuing to advance research. And by research, I think part of that is like collecting narratives. Like we've been doing this for about 6 years, and so you named some of the venerated Tuskegee Airmen or the troops that we all know too well, and knowing about that is deeply important. But I think we've also kind of forgotten that we have to preserve the stories of a lot of these veterans that didn't get access to their benefits, because that history is going to be so easily lost if we don't. And the time to do it is now. Like we've almost fully lost the World War II generation. We're going quickly into the Vietnam era now, and the need to make sure that we're collecting the narrative, specifically of the folks that stand up to be litigants in these cases, I think is a really important opportunity for us to narrative build for the public so they can understand the interconnectivity of this struggle for veterans benefits and what it means by way of, trying to actualize some kind of reparative mandate. So litigation, trying to get more organized on how we approach legislative repair, and, continuing to build, community amongst other Black veterans who are interested in this work that I think is always top of mind too.
It's kind of gut wrenching to me because like working in the fields that I kind of touch in my everyday life, people that have put their lives on the line and have done amazing things in the military throughout World War I, World War II, Vietnam. I mean, I'm thinking about Dory Miller and how he was, he did receive the Navy Cross, but his captain, who he helped save, helped protect, even though he eventually died of his wounds, gets Medal of Honor. And we're fighting VFW and American Legion chapters trying to fight for Dory Miller's Medal of Honor today.
Historically Black ones, because they were segregated at one point.
Exactly. And then in World War II, nobody got a Medal of Honor.
Yeah.
I mean, it took 30 years for presidents to go back and say, hey, these people deserve their recognition, and these people, deserve to be honored. I mean, so those types of things I think are I think important for people to get a kind of a perspective as to if those types of ideas and that type of discrimination existed in the service. What do you think would follow them when they got back home?
Yeah.
I mean, people being told to take off their uniform. Byron Stevenson, he's with the Equal Justice Initiative. He explained in a few documentaries and also in some of the stuff he's written, how Black veterans were told in the South to take off the uniform when they were standing at bus stops and train stations because they were offended by the fact that, these guys came home and they had a military uniform on, and they were sometimes lynched. Like 10 of the 22 or 30 people that were lynched during before 1940, 10 of them were Black veterans. So I mean, these types of things that that exist, they kind of give you perspective. But then when I think about what's going on today, you have, for example, in the education space, affirmative action was taken out of the process for admitting students to colleges. Do you think some of that type of ideology or that type of ideas that affirmative action is now no longer needed? Is that kind of filtering into the military culture or the military leadership?
Well, I mean, certainly there are folks that believe it shouldn't exist. Otherwise, the case by Ed Bloom to try to deconstruct it wouldn't be happening. But I do think that it's necessary. I mean, the disparities that exist still, even in the kinds of the number of students that are able to matriculate at schools like West Point and Annapolis or the Naval Academy, rather, are pretty disappointing. But listen, the military has always had a race problem. I don't think they've ever necessarily solved it. I think they just got good at PR under certain administrations. And I think that there's always going to be that tension. I think there are a lot of well-meaning actors, and certainly the military has diversified, and there are real strong efforts to try to make sure that the military reflects the broad stripes of our society in an equal way, and that there is equal opportunity in that ecosystem. But by and large, still white straight men are the ones that are most afforded opportunity in that apparatus. And there's still much work to be done to ensure that that racism or that homophobia, that sexism, that xenophobia isn't rampant in the ranks. And I'm not an expert on the DoD. I served, for 7 years as a combat medic, so I pull a lot from my own personal experience. But this work has been mostly focused on the VA, right? And once you get out and you take off that uniform, you should be, in so long as you serve honorably. And honestly, there can be into a whole conversation about whether or not folks with dishonorable discharges should be able to have access to basic care at the VA. I think that they should. But I think that ultimately, if you served our country, you should be able to gain access to the benefits of that service. And historically, Black vets have not. And that needs to be contended with if we're going to have a serious conversation about how we move our country forward across racial lines, and try to tackle the kind of vestiges of economic inequality and where they were birthed from.
I think that's really profound statements. I think as long as you start keeping those cases coming, like the Munt case, and also changing the public perception by letting people understand the history of Black service in America, not just, like you said, not just Blacks, but the LGBTQ community, Jews, Latinos, Native Americans, Asian Americans, all the people that have gone through the ranks and have done amazing things in the military.
Yeah.
And
we'll continue to do amazing things.
Exactly. So thank you for your time. I appreciate you. We got to have you back to kind of give us more information and kind of give us some updates on what types of things you've accomplished, because we want to see this ball moving forward, and we want to get some more cases out there to correct some of the inequities that happened in the past. Because once again, to sum it all up, people served in the military, deserved their benefits, and did not get them, or were denied them, or were delayed them. And that's the problem. And then those things have long-term effects in future generations.
Absolutely.
So we need to go back and fix those things, because there's families today that suffer or are not where they're supposed to be, and communities that aren't where they're supposed to be because they didn't get that injection of support that a lot of other communities did benefit from.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you again. Appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
Richard Berkshire, he is with the Black Veterans Project, and he is going to do some great things going forward. We want to hear about that, but make sure you go to our website, americashg.org. That's americashg.org, and give us some comments on what you think about this, and also give us some comments about shows you want to hear in the future.
Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are in